Those were the last words Maylene Carter heard before her mother-in-law slammed the door in her face. 3 years of marriage reduced to a suitcase on the porch and a diagnosis she couldn't fix. Barren, worthless, discarded. But what her ex-husband's family didn't know was that sometimes the greatest stories don't begin with triumph. They begin with survival. This is the story of a woman who lost everything, only to discover she'd been searching in all the wrong places. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this journey travels. And stay until the end, trust me. The rain started the moment Maylene Carter stepped off the brownstone porch for the last time. Not the gentle kind that whispers against windows and makes people sigh about cozy evenings. This was the brutal, unforgiving type. The kind that soaks through coats in seconds and turns perfectly maintained hair into dripping ropes. The kind that feels personal. Maylene stood there anyway, one hand gripping the handle of her suitcase, the other clutching the black umbrella that had already turned itself inside out. Behind her, the front door of 1847 Ashmont Avenue, the house she'd called home for 3 years, remained firmly shut. The porch light, which she'd always insisted on keeping lit, "It's welcoming, Daniel, it says people live here who care," had been switched off. The message was clear. She wasn't people. She didn't live here, and no one cared. "Ma'am, you need me to wait?" The cab driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a Patriots cap, leaned out his window. His wipers beat a frantic rhythm against the downpour. Maylene realized she'd been standing there for almost a full minute, staring at that darkened porch light like it might flicker back to life if she just wished hard enough. "No," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'm coming." She turned away from the house, from the life she'd tried so desperately to build inside it, and walked toward the cab. Each step felt like pulling her feet from cement. The suitcase wheels caught on every crack in the sidewalk, making her journey to the curb a series of stumbles and stops. Fitting, really. That's how the whole marriage had been. The driver got out to help with her luggage, tucking it into the trunk with the care of someone who'd seen this scene before. Woman. Suitcase. Rain. Closed door. He didn't ask questions. She was grateful for that. "Where to?" he asked once they were both inside, the sudden absence of rain creating an almost startling quiet. Maylene pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her coat pocket. The ink had run slightly from the rain, but the address was still legible. South Station, the westbound platform. He nodded and pulled away from the curb. Maylene didn't look back. There was nothing to see anyway, just a house that had never really been hers, occupied by a man who'd never really been her husband, not in any way that mattered. The fight, if you could even call it that, had happened 3 days ago. It wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming, no thrown dishes, no desperate pleas. That would have required passion, and their marriage had run out of that commodity somewhere around month 9, right after the second fertility specialist had delivered the same news as the first. Maylene had been in the kitchen, methodically chopping vegetables for a dinner Daniel probably wouldn't eat. He'd been working late 4 nights that week, though she'd stopped believing that excuse around the time she'd smelled perfume on his collar. Not her perfume, something younger, brighter, more hopeful. The front door had opened, and she'd heard 2 sets of footsteps. Her stomach had dropped. Daniel never brought anyone home. The house was hers to manage, hers to maintain, hers to exist in quietly while he built his real life somewhere else. That was the unspoken arrangement they'd fallen into after the doctors had made it clear that Maylene's body was, as his mother so delicately put it, not fit for purpose. "Maylene!" Daniel's voice had carried that particular tone he used when he wanted to sound reasonable, patient, like he was dealing with a child or a particularly slow employee. "Can you come to the living room, please?" She'd set down the knife with the deliberate care of someone trying to steady their hands and walked into the next room. Daniel had been standing by the fireplace. His power position, he called it. The place he stood when he wanted to feel tall. Next to him, perched on the edge of the cream sofa that Maylene had spent 2 months selecting, was his mother. Patricia Ashford Carter was 72 years old and had the kind of beauty that came from good genetics, better plastic surgery, and the absolute certainty that she was superior to everyone around her. Her silver hair was always perfectly coiffed. Her clothes were always perfectly pressed. Her smile was always perfectly cold. She hadn't been smiling that day. "Maylene," Patricia had said, her voice carrying the clipped consonants of someone who'd attended boarding schools with names instead of addresses. "Sit down. We need to discuss your situation." "My situation?" Maylene had remained standing. Some instinct, maybe the same one that tells small animals when a predator is near, had told her that sitting would be a mistake. "Your inability to provide my son with an heir," Patricia had said, as casually as if she were discussing the weather. "It's been 3 years. The doctors have been quite clear. And frankly, this has gone on long enough." Maylene's eyes had flicked to Daniel. He'd been studying the fireplace mantel with great interest, his jaw tight, not defending her, not even looking at her. "I've consulted with our attorney," Patricia had continued, pulling a folder from her expensive leather handbag. "The prenuptial agreement your parents signed—" "My parents are dead," Maylene had said quietly. Patricia had waved this away like an inconvenient detail. "The agreement clearly states that in the event the marriage fails to produce children within 5 years, dissolution can be initiated without the standard waiting period. We're being generous by not making you wait the full term." "Generous," Maylene had repeated, tasting the word. It was bitter. "The house is in the family trust. You'll need to vacate within the week. Daniel has already moved most of your personal effects to the guest room. I've arranged for a storage unit. Where is she supposed to go?" The question had come from Daniel, surprising everyone, including himself. He'd finally looked up from the fireplace, his face flushed. For a moment, Maylene had felt something flicker in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or just the memory of it. Patricia had looked at her son the way you might look at a dog that had suddenly started speaking French. "That's hardly our concern. She has friends, presumably. Family somewhere, I'm sure." "I don't," Maylene had said. Both of them had looked at her then. "I don't have family. My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. I worked 3 jobs to get through college. I met Daniel at a hospital fundraiser. I had friends before we got married, but..." She'd trailed off. But what? But they drifted away when she'd become Mrs. Daniel Carter, when her life had shrunk to the size of this house and this marriage and the endless cycle of appointments and tests and failures. "Well," Patricia had said, snapping the folder shut with finality. "That's unfortunate, but it doesn't change the facts. You failed to fulfill your primary obligation. The marriage is over. You have until Saturday." That had been Wednesday. The train station was exactly as depressing as Maylene remembered from the one other time she'd been there, when she and Daniel had taken a weekend trip to New York in their first year of marriage, back when he'd still occasionally held her hand in public. The westbound platform was nearly empty at 7 in the evening. Just a handful of travelers, a college student with enormous headphones, an elderly couple sharing a thermos of something that smelled like coffee, and a businessman who kept checking his watch like he could intimidate time into moving faster. Maylene's train wasn't due for another 40 minutes. She sat on a cold metal bench, her still damp coat making her shiver, and pulled out her phone. 23% battery. No new messages. The wallpaper was still the default image it had come with. She'd never bothered to personalize it with photos of her and Daniel. Some part of her had always known. She opened her email and read, for probably the 50th time, the message that had arrived 2 weeks ago. "Dear Ms. Carter, thank you for your inquiry regarding the position of household manager at Sweetwater Ranch. While we typically prefer candidates with agricultural experience, your references and background in hospitality management are impressive. The position includes room and board in exchange for managing the main house, coordinating meals, and providing general household support. The ranch owner, Mr. Caleb Boone, is a widower with 2 children and requires someone who can start immediately. If you're still interested, please call the number below to arrange a preliminary conversation. Regards, Sarah Mitchell." Sweetwater Valley Employment Agency Maylene had found the listing during one of those desperate 3 in the morning internet searches, the kind you do when sleep is impossible and the future feels like a wall you're about to hit at full speed. She'd been looking for anything: jobs, apartments, escape routes. The posting had been vague, but intriguing. Household position available, remote location, immediate start, room and board included. She'd applied on impulse, not really believing anything would come of it, But Sarah Mitchell had called 3 days later, and they'd had a conversation that Maylene still wasn't entirely sure had been real. "I'm going to be honest with you," Sarah had said, her voice warm and matter-of-fact in that particularly Midwestern way. "This isn't a normal household position. Caleb Boone is a good man, but he's drowning. His wife died 2 years ago, and he's been trying to run a cattle ranch while raising 2 kids on his own. The house is chaos. The kids are struggling. He needs help, but he's too proud to admit it. What he really needs is someone stable, someone kind, someone who won't run when things get hard." "Why would things get hard?" Maylene had asked. There'd been a long pause. "His daughter Ava is 14. She's been the woman of the house since her mother died, and she's not going to give up that role easily. His son Noah is 6 and barely talks. And Caleb himself, well, he's not exactly emotionally available. This isn't a job for someone looking for warmth and gratitude. What is it a job for then? Someone who needs a place to heal as much as they need to help. Someone who understands that sometimes you rebuild by helping others rebuild. Does that sound like you, Ms. Carter?" It had. It still did. Maylene had called Sarah back this morning from a payphone outside a grocery store because she'd been too ashamed to make the call from inside the house where Daniel's mother might overhear. "I'm coming," she'd said. "If the position is still available, I'm coming." "It's available," Sarah had confirmed. "Can you be here by tomorrow evening? I know that's fast, but I can be there tonight if there's a train." There was. It left at 8:47 p.m. and arrived in Sweetwater Valley at 6:32 a.m., with 2 transfers and what the schedule optimistically called brief layovers, but which Maylene suspected would be hours of waiting in fluorescent-lit stations that smelled like industrial cleaning solution and regret. She didn't care. Anything was better than here. "Excuse me, miss?" Maylene looked up to find the elderly woman from the coffee-sharing couple standing in front of her, a concerned expression on her weathered face. "Yes?" "Are you all right? You've been sitting there shivering for 20 minutes. Harold and I have an extra blanket in our bag if you'd like it." The kindness was so unexpected that Maylene felt tears spring to her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "I'm fine, thank you. My train is coming soon." The woman, small and round, with the kind of face that suggested she'd spent a lifetime smiling, tilted her head. "Where are you headed, if you don't mind my asking?" "West, a town called Sweetwater Valley." "Oh!" The woman's face lit up. "That's cattle country. Beautiful out there, if you don't mind wide open spaces and more cows than people. You have family there?" "A job." "Good for you." The woman patted Maylene's shoulder with a weathered hand. "New starts are scary, but they're often exactly what we need." "I should know. I've had 3 of them. Harold was my second husband. First one drank himself to death. I thought I was done, but then I met Harold at a church potluck, and here we are, 42 years later, still drinking coffee on train platforms." She smiled, and Maylene found herself smiling back despite everything. "What's your name, dear?" "Maylene." "That's lovely. Chinese?" "My mother was. My father was American. They named me after my grandmother." "Well, Maylene, you remember something for me. Whatever you're running from, it's already behind you. The only direction you need to worry about is forward. You hear me?" Maylene nodded, not trusting her voice. The woman patted her shoulder once more and returned to Harold, who handed her the thermos and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Maylene watched them and felt something crack in her chest. Not breaking, that had already happened. This was different. This was the first piece falling away. But the train, when it finally arrived, was older than Maylene expected and less crowded. She found a seat by a window and tucked her suitcase in the overhead compartment. The fabric on the seats was worn thin in places, and someone had carved Jenny plus Mike Forever into the plastic of the window frame. Maylene wondered if Jenny and Mike were still together. Probably not. Forever was a lie people told themselves to make the present more bearable. The train lurched into motion with a sound like a dying animal, then settled into a rhythmic rumble. The city began to slide past the window, buildings giving way to suburbs, giving way to the kind of industrial areas that exist in the margins of every major city. Warehouses, storage units, abandoned factories with broken windows. Maylene's reflection stared back at her from the dark glass. She looked terrible. Her hair, which she'd always kept carefully styled because Patricia insisted that a Carter wife should be presentable at all times, hung in damp tangles. Her face was pale, shadows under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. Her coat was wrinkled and still wet, but her eyes were different than they'd been 3 days ago. They were angry. She'd spent 3 years being sad, being apologetic, being the woman who'd failed, who couldn't do the one thing that apparently mattered. She'd absorbed every disappointed look from Daniel, every cutting comment from Patricia, every pitying glance from the doctors who'd delivered the same verdict over and over. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter. Some women simply can't conceive." As if she didn't know, as if her body hadn't already told her, month after month, with the cruel regularity of a clock that only counted failures. But sitting on this train, watching Boston disappear behind her, Maylene felt something shift. She wasn't sad anymore. She was furious. Not at her body. That was a trap she'd fallen into too many times, hating herself for something she couldn't control. No, she was furious at Daniel for being too weak to stand up to his mother. Furious at Patricia for treating her like a broken appliance that could be discarded when it stopped working. Furious at herself for accepting it for so long. 3 years. 3 years of trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, the perfect patient in those sterile doctor's offices with their inspirational posters about miracles and their pamphlets about IVF that cost more than her parents' funeral had. 3 years of shrinking herself smaller and smaller, trying to take up less space, cause less trouble, be less of a disappointment. Well, she was done shrinking. The first transfer was in Hartford at 11:38 p.m. The station was nearly deserted, just a janitor pushing a mop bucket and a security guard who looked like he was asleep on his feet. Maylene had 90 minutes until her next train, so she bought a terrible cup of coffee from a vending machine and found a bench where she could see the departures board. Her phone buzzed. She almost didn't look. It was probably just spam, but some masochistic impulse made her check. "Daniel, we need to talk. 3 words. Not, 'I'm sorry.' Not, 'I was wrong.' Not even, 'Are you okay?' Just, 'We need to talk.'" She stared at the message for a long moment, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of her, the part that had spent 3 years trying to be what he wanted to respond, wanted to ask what he needed to talk about, wanted to give him one more chance to be the man she'd thought he was when they'd met. But that man had never existed. The Daniel she'd married at 24, standing in a garden full of white roses that Patricia had selected, had been a performance. The real Daniel was the one who stood silently while his mother called his wife a failure. The real Daniel was the one who'd moved her belongings to the guest room without even telling her to her face. Maylene deleted the message and turned off her phone. The second transfer was in Albany at 3:17 a.m. This station was slightly more populated, late-night travelers with the glazed expressions of people who existed in that strange liminal space between days. Maylene bought a stale sandwich from a 24-hour convenience store and ate it mechanically, not tasting anything. Her next train didn't leave until 4:45 a.m. She found a quieter corner of the station and leaned against her suitcase, closing her eyes. Not sleeping, she'd learned long ago that she couldn't sleep sitting up, but resting, conserving energy. First time running away? Maylene's eyes snapped open. A woman was sitting 2 seats down, maybe mid-50s, with graying hair pulled into a messy bun, and the kind of face that suggested she'd lived several complete lives and had strong opinions about all of them. She was wearing a denim jacket covered in pins with various slogans. Nevertheless, she persisted. Well-behaved women rarely make history. "I'm not bossy. I'm the boss." "Excuse me?" Maylene said. The woman gestured at Maylene's suitcase. "1 bag. No return ticket. That look in your eyes like you're waiting for someone to tell you to come back. Classic runaway profile. Don't worry. I'm not judging. I've done it twice myself. Once at 23, once at 47. Both times were the right call." Maylene wasn't sure whether to be offended or impressed. "I'm not running away. I'm going to a job." "Sure. And I'm going to visit my sister in Buffalo." The woman grinned. "We're both lying, but at least we're doing it with style. I'm Donna, by the way. Maylin. Pretty name. So what's his deal? Cheater? Abuser? Mama's boy? That's none of your business. Fair. Donna pulled out a pack of gum and offered a piece to Maylin, who shook her head. But here's the thing about running away, and I say this with the authority of someone who's done it successfully. The first 24 hours are the hardest. Your brain keeps trying to convince you to go back. It'll tell you that whatever you're leaving can't be that bad, that you're overreacting, that you should give him one more chance. Your brain is a liar, Donna continued, unwrapping her gum. It's scared of change, so it'll try to drag you back to what's familiar, even if what's familiar is slowly killing you. You want my advice? Not really. I'm going to give it to you anyway. Whatever you left behind, it's already over. The version of yourself that lived there is dead. Mourn her if you need to, but don't go back and try to resurrect her. She's done. You're someone new now, someone who gets on trains in the middle of the night with one suitcase and moves towards something instead of just away from something. Maylin felt something tighten in her throat. You don't know what you're talking about. Maybe not. Donna stood up, shouldering a backpack that looked like it had been through several wars. But in 6 months, when you're settled wherever you're going, remember this conversation. Remember that some random woman in a train station at 3 a.m. told you that you're going to be fine. Better than fine. You're going to be free. She walked away before Maylin could respond, disappearing into the sparse crowd of late-night travelers. Maylin sat there for a long time, staring at the departures board without really seeing it. Free. When was the last time she'd felt free? The final train was smaller, older, and smelled faintly of livestock. Maylin was the only passenger in her car. She stretched out across 2 seats, using her coat as a blanket, and watched the darkness outside the window gradually give way to the gray pre-dawn light. She must have dozed off at some point because she woke with a start to the conductor's voice crackling over the intercom. Sweetwater Valley Station, next stop. Sweetwater Valley, 3 minutes. Maylin sat up, her neck stiff, her mouth tasting like the terrible coffee she'd drunk hours ago. She checked her phone, 6:28 a.m., 4% battery. The landscape outside the window had completely changed. Gone were the cities, the suburbs, the industrial sprawl. Instead, there were fields, vast rolling expanses of land that seemed to go on forever. In the distance, mountains rose against the pale sky. The sun was just beginning to crest the horizon, painting everything in shades of pink and gold. It was beautiful. Maylin had spent her entire life in cities, Boston, then Philadelphia for college, then back to Boston. She'd never seen this much open space. It should have felt empty, but instead it felt possible, like there was room for something new. The train began to slow. Sweetwater Valley Station turned out to be a small wooden platform with a single bench and a sign that had seen better decades. There was no station building, no ticket counter, no crowds. Just the platform, a gravel parking lot, and beyond that, the small town itself. A main street with maybe a dozen buildings, including what looked like a general store, a diner, and a post office. The train shuddered to a stop. Maylin gathered her suitcase and stepped onto the platform. The air was different here, cleaner, sharper, with an edge of cold that Boston never quite managed. She could smell something green and growing, underlaid with the faint scent of animals and earth. Maylin Carter? She turned to find a woman approaching from the parking lot, 50-ish, with gray blonde hair cut short and practical, wearing jeans and a canvas jacket. Her face was weathered in that particular way that comes from years of sun and wind, but her smile was genuine. Sarah Mitchell? That's me. Sarah extended a hand, her grip firm and warm. Welcome to Sweetwater Valley. How was the trip? Long? Maylin said honestly. I bet. You look exhausted. Come on, my truck's over here. I figured we'd get you some breakfast at Rosie's. The diner makes the best pancakes in the county, and then we can head out to the ranch. Caleb's expecting you around 8. Maylin followed Sarah to a dusty pickup truck that had clearly been white at some point in its life. She hefted her suitcase into the truck bed while Sarah climbed into the driver's seat. Fair warning, Sarah said as Maylin buckled in. Sweetwater Valley is not Boston. We've got one stoplight, and it's been broken for 6 months. The nearest hospital is 40 minutes away. Cell service is spotty. And people here are going to know your business before you do because gossip is our primary form of entertainment. That's honest. I find honesty saves time. Sarah pulled out of the parking lot and onto a two-lane road that cut straight through fields. So let me be honest with you. I think you're running from something. I don't know what, and I'm not going to ask because it's not my business. But I need to know. Are you running to something or just away from something? Because if you're just running, this job isn't going to work out. Maylene looked out at the fields rolling past. A hawk circled overhead, hunting for breakfast. Both, she said finally. I'm running from something that was destroying me. And I'm running toward, I don't know yet. A chance to be useful, maybe. A place where I can rebuild. Sarah nodded slowly. That'll do. Caleb needs someone who understands that rebuilding isn't pretty. His family, She paused, choosing her words. They're broken in different ways. His daughter Ava, she's been holding everything together with sheer force of will and anger. His son Noah barely speaks to anyone. And Caleb himself, he's so buried in grief and work that he barely sees what's happening to his kids. You're not walking into a functional household. You're walking into a disaster zone. Then why are you sending me there? Because I think you might be exactly the right kind of disaster to meet their disaster. Sarah glanced at her. Sometimes broken people are the best at helping other broken people. We understand the language. They drove in silence for a few minutes. The town gave way to more open country, ranches marked by wooden fences, cattle grazing in distant fields, the occasional farmhouse set back from the road. There's something else you should know, Sarah said as they pulled into the parking lot of a small diner with a hand-painted sign reading Rosie's. The job posting I sent you, it wasn't entirely accurate. Maylene's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Sarah turned off the engine and faced her. The job is real, the pay is real, the room and board are real, but Caleb didn't exactly post it. I did. He's too stubborn to admit he needs help, so I took matters into my own hands. He knows you're coming. I told him yesterday, but he's not exactly thrilled about it. You're joking. I wish I was. But here's the thing. Caleb's a good man. Honest, hardworking, decent to his core. But he's drowning, and he's too proud to grab the life preserver. So I'm throwing it at his head and hoping he doesn't throw it back. Maylene stared at her. You want me to work for someone who doesn't even want me there? No. I want you to work for someone who needs you there. Whether he knows it yet or not. Big difference. Sarah opened her door. Now come on, let's get some food in you before we head to the ranch. You're going to need your strength. Rosie's diner was exactly what Maylene expected. Red vinyl booths, a counter with swivel stools, a jukebox in the corner that probably hadn't worked since 1987, and a heavy-set woman behind the counter with a name tag that read Rosie and an expression that suggested she didn't suffer fools. Sarah Mitchell, Rosie called out the moment they walked in. You bringing me new blood to gossip about? This is Maylene Carter. She's taking the position at Sweetwater Ranch. Rosie's eyebrows shot up. Caleb finally admitted he needs help. Hell must have frozen over. Sit, sit. Coffee? Plate. Maylene said, sliding into a booth. Rosie poured 2 cups of coffee that looked strong enough to fuel a rocket and slid menus in front of them. Pancakes are good today. So's the hash. Avoid the eggs. The chickens are in a mood. Sarah ordered pancakes. Maylene, still too nervous to have much appetite, ordered the same. As Rosie walked away, Maylene wrapped her hands around the coffee mug, savoring the warmth. Tell me about the kids, she said. Ava and Noah. Sarah sighed. Ava's 14 going on 40. She's smart, capable, and angry at the world. She's been running that household since her mother died, and she's not going to give it up easily. She'll test you. She'll push you away. She'll probably say some things that'll cut deep. Don't take it personally. She's scared of being replaced. And Noah? Noah's 6. Sweetest kid you'll ever meet, but he barely talks. He used to be chatty, according to Caleb, but after his mother died, he just closed up. He communicates mostly in nods and shakes of his head. The school's concerned, but Caleb won't take him to a therapist because... She trailed off. Because? Because Caleb doesn't believe in asking for help. He thinks you should be able to handle your own problems. It's a ranch mentality. You fix your own fences, birth your own calves, solve your own issues. Except some things can't be fixed alone. The pancakes arrived, fluffy and enormous, with real maple syrup and butter that was definitely not margarine. What happened to their mother? Maylene asked quietly. Sarah was quiet for a moment, pouring syrup. Car accident 2 years ago this March. She was driving back from town in a snowstorm, lost control on a curve, died on impact. Ava was the one who found her. Caleb was out checking on the herd, and Ava had stayed home with Noah. When their mother didn't come home, Ava got worried and walked down the road to look. She found the car in a ditch. Maylene felt her stomach turn. That's horrible. Yeah. Ava hasn't talked about it since, just took over all her mother's responsibilities and acts like if she keeps everything running, her mother's death doesn't matter. Noah stopped talking, and Caleb buried himself in work. Sarah looked at Maylene. So when I say they're broken, I'm not exaggerating. You're walking into a family that's been holding itself together with duct tape and denial. And you think I can help them? I think you're the first person who's been desperate enough to try. Sarah smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Most people want easy jobs, happy families, grateful employers. You're getting none of those things. What you're getting is a chance to matter to people who've forgotten what that feels like. Maylene ate her pancakes slowly, thinking. She'd spent 3 years trying to matter to people who'd never really wanted her, trying to be valuable to a husband who'd seen her as a means to an end, a mother-in-law who'd seen her as a disappointing acquisition. Maybe it was time to try mattering to people who actually needed her, even if they didn't know it yet. But the drive to Sweetwater Ranch took another 20 minutes on increasingly rough roads. They passed other ranches, sprawling properties with houses set far back from the road, horses grazing in paddocks, the occasional glimpse of cattle in distant fields. The land here was different from anything Maylene had seen before, wild and beautiful, with a kind of stark majesty that made Boston's carefully manicured parks look artificial by comparison. Finally, Sarah turned onto a dirt road marked by a wooden sign. Sweetwater Ranch, established 1952. Wool, barbarsmachem, bull. The road wound through a stand of cottonwood trees before opening up to reveal the ranch itself. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. The main house was a large 2-story structure with a wraparound porch and big windows that probably had spectacular views. But the porch was cluttered with boots and buckets and what looked like broken farm equipment. One of the shutters hung at an angle. The flower beds that must have once been carefully maintained were overgrown with weeds. Beyond the house, Maylene could see a barn, several outbuildings, and in the distance, cattle dotting the hillside. It used to be prettier, Sarah said quietly, reading her expression. Catherine, Caleb's wife, she had a real talent for making things beautiful. Gardens, decorations, the way she arranged furniture. After she died, all of that just stopped. Sarah parked the truck near the house. Before they could get out, the front door opened. A man stepped onto the porch. Caleb Boone was tall, maybe 6'2", with the kind of build that came from years of physical labor. His hair was dark and slightly too long, as if he'd been too busy to get it cut. His face was weathered, lined around the eyes in a way that suggested he spent most of his time squinting into the sun. He was wearing worn jeans, work boots, and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked exhausted. "Sarah," he said, his voice a deep rumble. His eyes flicked to Maylene, then away. "This is her?" "Caleb Boone, meet Maylene Carter." "Maylene, this is Caleb." Maylene got out of the truck and walked toward the porch. Up close, she could see that Caleb's eyes were blue, a startling, clear blue, and currently filled with something that looked like resignation. "Mr. Boone," she said, extending her hand. He looked at it for a moment before shaking it. His hand was rough, calloused, warm. "Just Caleb. We don't do formalities out here." "Caleb, then." An awkward silence fell. Sarah, apparently deciding her work was done, cleared her throat. "Well, I'll leave you two to discuss terms. Maylene, call me if you need anything. Caleb, be nice." "I'm always nice," Caleb muttered. But Sarah was already climbing back into her truck. They stood there, Maylene on the gravel drive, Caleb on the porch, and watched Sarah drive away. When the dust had settled, Caleb finally looked at her properly. I'm going to be straight with you, he said. I didn't ask for help. Sarah took it upon herself to post that job listing without consulting me. I'm not. I'm not good with strangers in my house. I don't know what she told you, but this place is a working ranch. It's not some bed and breakfast. We work long hours. We work hard, and I don't have time to babysit someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Maylene lifted her chin. I don't need babysitting. I need a job. Sarah said you need help managing the household. I can cook, clean, organize, manage schedules. I worked in hospitality for 6 years before I got married. I'm efficient, reliable, and I don't need hand-holding. Why'd you leave hospitality? I got married. And now? I'm not married anymore. Caleb studied her for a long moment. Maylene had the distinct impression she was being evaluated like livestock, assessed for quality, fitness for purpose, likelihood of causing problems. You ever lived in the country before? No. You know anything about ranching? No. You allergic to anything? Scared of animals? Got any health conditions I should know about? Maylene felt something hot and sharp rise in her throat. I can't have children, she said flatly. If that's what you're asking. Caleb's expression didn't change. That wasn't what I was asking. I was asking if you've got asthma or a fear of dogs or something that's going to be a problem. But since you brought it up, he paused. I've already got 2 children. I don't need more. If you're okay with that, then we're fine. Maylene felt something unknot in her chest. I'm okay with that. All right then. Caleb gestured toward the house. Come on, I'll show you around. He led her inside. The house was exactly as Sarah had suggested. Beautiful bones, but neglected. The living room had comfortable furniture and a stone fireplace, but there were papers scattered on every surface, muddy boot prints on the floor, and what looked like a week's worth of dishes stacked in the kitchen sink. I know it's a mess, Caleb said, not sounding particularly apologetic. Like I said, I've been managing on my own. The kids do their best, but Ava's got school and Noah's too young to be much help. Where are they now? Ava's at school. Noah's with my neighbor, Ellen. She watches him during the day. I'll pick him up later. He showed her the rest of the house. A formal dining room that clearly hadn't been used in years, a mudroom crammed with coats and boots, a laundry room where clothes were piled in what appeared to be a complex archaeological system. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms. Caleb's was at the end of the hall, door closed. Ava's room was next to it, with a handmade "Keep Out" sign on the door. Noah's room was across the hall. The door opened to reveal a space that looked too tidy, too carefully controlled for a 6-year-old. This one's yours, Caleb said, opening the 4th door. The room was simple but nice. A double bed with a worn quilt, a dresser, a small desk under a window that looked out over the fields. It was clean, at least. Someone had made an effort. It was Catherine's sewing room, Caleb said quietly. Before. I cleared it out last week when Sarah told me you were coming. Maylene set her suitcase down by the bed. It's perfect, thank you. Caleb nodded. They stood there awkwardly for a moment. Look, Caleb said finally. I'm not good at this. Having someone here who isn't family, but Sarah's right. I need help. The house is a disaster, the kids are struggling, and I'm running on about 4 hours of sleep a night trying to keep the ranch going. So if you're willing to stay, I'll pay you what Sarah said in the listing. Room and board plus $500 a week. You'll have Sundays off. In exchange, you keep the house running, cook meals, and generally keep things from falling apart. Does that work for you? Yes. Good. You can start tomorrow. Today, just settle in. I've got to get back to work. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Ava's going to hate you. What? My daughter. She's going to hate you. Just be prepared for that. She's been the woman of this house for 2 years, and she's not going to give it up without a fight. Why are you telling me this? Caleb's expression was unreadable. Because the last 3 people Sarah hired quit within a week. I figure if you know what you're getting into, maybe you'll last longer. He left before Maylene could respond. She stood in her new room, in this strange house, in this strange place, with this strange grieving family, and felt the enormity of what she'd done crash over her. She'd left everything she knew for this. A house that didn't want her, a man who barely spoke to her, a daughter who was going to hate her. a son who didn't speak at all. But as she looked out the window at the vast expanse of land, at the mountains in the distance and the endless sky, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. She felt like she'd finally stopped running away from something. And maybe, just maybe, she'd started running toward something instead. Maylene spent the rest of that first day unpacking her single suitcase and trying not to think about how few possessions she actually owned. 3 years of marriage, and everything she had fit into one bag. Clothes, mostly. Practical things she'd bought herself because Patricia had always criticized her taste. A few books. A photo of her parents taken before the accident, the edges worn from too much handling. Her laptop. A small jewelry box containing exactly 2 items. Her grandmother's jade bracelet and a pair of pearl earrings her mother had given her for her college graduation. She'd left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter in Boston. Hadn't even considered bringing it. By the time she'd finished, it was barely noon. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of settling wood and the distant lowing of cattle. Caleb had disappeared somewhere onto the ranch. Maylene stood in the kitchen, surveying the disaster zone, and made a decision. If she was going to be here, she might as well be useful. She started with the dishes. The sink was full of them, crusty plates, glasses with dried milk residue, silverware that looked like it hadn't been properly washed in weeks. The dish soap was nearly empty. The sponge was falling apart. She found a pair of rubber gloves under the sink and got to work. It took her 2 hours to clean the kitchen properly. She washed every dish, scrubbed the counters, swept the floor, wiped down the cabinets. She found a mop in the laundry room and used it on the tile floor, which turned the water black on the first pass. By the time she finished, her back ached and her hands were wrinkled despite the gloves. But the kitchen looked almost normal, clean, at least. She was standing back admiring her work when the front door opened. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Then Caleb appeared in the kitchen doorway. He stopped, stared at the clean kitchen, then at her. "I thought I told you to settle in today." "I did. This helped me settle in." He walked to the counter, ran a hand over the clean surface like he wasn't sure it was real. "You didn't have to do this." "I know, I wanted to." Caleb opened the refrigerator, pulled out a beer, then seemed to think better of it and put it back. He grabbed a glass of water instead. "Ava's going to be home soon. Bus comes at 3:30. Maylene glanced at the clock. It was 3:15. Do you want me to meet her, or? Might as well. Fair warning, though, she's not going to be happy. That turned out to be the understatement of the century. The school bus rumbled to a stop at the end of the long driveway at exactly 3:32. Maylene watched from the porch as a girl climbed down the steps and started walking toward the house. Ava Boone was tall for 14, nearly 5'8", with her father's dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She was wearing jeans, boots, and a flannel shirt that looked like it had been through several seasons of hard use. She walked with the kind of stride that suggested she'd been working on ranches since she could walk. She made it halfway up the driveway before she noticed Maylene on the porch. She stopped. Her entire body went rigid. Then she started walking again, faster, her jaw set in a way that made Maylene think of Patricia. "Who are you?" Ava demanded the moment she reached the porch steps. Not hi, or hello, or even excuse me. Just, who are you? "I'm Maylene Carter. Your father hired me to help around the house." "Did he?" It wasn't a question. Ava's eyes, the same startling blue as her father's, were cold. "Where is he?" "Out working, I think. He said he'd be back." "Dad!" Ava pushed past Maylene and into the house. "Dad!" Caleb appeared from somewhere in the back of the house, still in his work clothes. "Ava, I'm right here. No need to shout." "Who's that woman?" "Her name's Maylene. She's going to be helping out around here." "We don't need help." "Yeah, we do." "I've been managing fine." Caleb's expression softened slightly. "I know you have, sweetheart, but you shouldn't have to. You should be focusing on school and your friends, not running a household." "I don't have friends, and school's fine." Ava's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "We don't need some stranger coming in here, and it's not up for discussion, Ava. You didn't even ask me. I'm your father. I don't have to ask you." Maylene, still standing on the porch, felt acutely uncomfortable. This wasn't her conversation to be part of. She started to back away, but Ava's voice stopped her. What's she going to do exactly? Cook? I can cook? Clean? I've been cleaning. Is she going to tuck Noah in at night? Read him stories? Because I've been doing that too. So what exactly do we need her for? The word her dripped with contempt. Caleb's jaw tightened. Ava, she's going to leave anyway. They all do. Sarah's hired, 3 people in the last year? And they all quit within a week because this place is too hard, or too remote, or too whatever. So why are we even bothering? Because I'm tired, Caleb said, and his voice cracked just slightly on the last word. I'm tired, Ava. I can't keep doing this alone, and I can't keep watching you sacrifice your childhood to hold this place together. So yes, I hired help, and yes, she's staying, and you're going to be civil to her. Understood? Ava's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears, but she blinked them away furiously. Whatever, I have homework. She stormed upstairs. A door slammed hard enough to shake the house. Caleb stood there for a moment, his shoulders sagging. Then he seemed to remember Maylene was there and straightened up. Sorry about that. Don't be. She has every right to be angry. She doesn't have the right to be rude. She's 14 and grieving. I think she has the right to be whatever she needs to be. Caleb looked at her for a long moment. You're not going to quit, are you? Not today. That's more than the last one managed. She quit before she even unpacked. He grabbed his keys from a hook by the door. I need to pick up Noah from Ellen's. You want to come? Might as well meet him now. Get all the awkward introductions over with. Maylene followed him to a truck that was somehow even more battered than Sarah's. The passenger side door squeaked in protest when she opened it. Inside, the truck smelled like hay and motor oil and something else she couldn't quite identify. Coffee, maybe, mixed with dirt. They drove in silence for about 5 minutes before Caleb spoke. Catherine, my wife, she was good with people. Could smooth over any situation, make anyone feel welcome. I'm not. That's not a skill I have. You're doing fine. I'm really not. The house is a disaster. My daughter hates everyone. My son doesn't talk. I'm failing at pretty much everything except keeping the cattle alive. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her, and Maylene didn't quite know how to respond. From what I can see, you're keeping your family alive too. That counts for something. Does it? Most days it feels like we're just going through the motions. Getting up because that's what you do. Working because the work needs doing. But actually living? I don't think any of us remember how to do that. He pulled into the driveway of a small house about 2 miles from the ranch. Before they could get out, the front door opened and a woman emerged, late 60s with gray hair and a soft, rounded face. Caleb, right on time for once. Her eyes flicked to Maylene with open curiosity. And who's this? Ellen. This is Maylene Carter. She's helping out at the house. Maylene, Ellen Morrison. She's been watching Noah for me. Ellen's face lit up. Oh, thank goodness. Sarah told me she'd found someone, but I didn't believe it until now. Come in, come in. Noah's in the living room. We've been building with blocks. The house was warm and smelled like cookies. Ellen led them to a living room where a small boy sat on the floor, carefully stacking wooden blocks into an elaborate tower. Noah Boone was tiny for 6, delicate, almost fragile-looking, with his mother's blonde hair and his father's blue eyes. He was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt with a cartoon dinosaur on it. He looked up when they entered, and his face brightened when he saw Caleb. But he didn't say anything, just smiled and went back to his blocks. Noah, buddy, come say hi. Caleb knelt down next to him. This is Miss Maylene. She's going to be staying with us for a while. Noah looked at Maylene. His eyes were solemn, assessing. Then he held up one of his blocks, a blue rectangle, and pointed to her, then to the block. I think he's asking if you want to build with him, Ellen said softly. Maylene sat down on the floor, ignoring the protest from her knees. I'd love to. For the next 10 minutes, she and Noah built in companionable silence. He would hand her blocks, and she would add them to the tower according to some pattern only he understood. When the tower finally fell, as all block towers eventually do, he didn't cry or get upset. He just started building again. He's been like this since Catherine died, Ellen murmured to Caleb while Maylene played with Noah. Quiet. Internal. The school counselor says he's processing trauma, that he'll talk when he's ready. But it's been 2 years. I know. Maybe having a woman in the house again will help. He loved his mother so much. Maybe Miss Maylene can... Let's not put that pressure on her, Caleb said, but his voice was tired. She's here to help with the house, not fix my broken kid. He's not broken, Maylene said, not looking up from the blocks. He's just quiet. There's a difference. Noah handed her another block. This one was red. He smiled at her, small, tentative, but real. The drive back to the ranch was quieter. Noah sat in the back seat of the truck, looking out the window. Maylene watched him in the side mirror, this silent little boy who carried so much grief in such a small body. Does he ever talk? She asked Caleb quietly. At all? Sometimes. To Ava, mostly. A word here and there to me, but not like he used to. Catherine said he talked non-stop before she died. Questions about everything, stories about nothing. Now. Caleb's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Now, I can't remember the last time I heard him laugh. When they got home, Ava was in the kitchen, aggressively making dinner. She'd pulled out ingredients for spaghetti and was chopping an onion with more force than was strictly necessary. I've got dinner, she announced without looking at any of them. It'll be ready in 30 minutes. Ava, you don't have to. I said I've got it. Caleb looked at Maylene helplessly. She gave a small shrug. Pick your battles, her expression said. Dinner was tense and silent. Ava had made enough spaghetti to feed a small army, and it was actually quite good. But she served it with the energy of someone proving a point. See? I can do this. You don't need her. Noah ate carefully, methodically twirling exactly 3 strands of spaghetti on his fork each time. Caleb ate quickly, like eating was a chore to get through. Ava didn't eat at all, just pushed food around her plate. Maylene tried to make conversation. This is delicious, Ava. Where'd you learn to cook? Ava's fork scraped against her plate. My mom taught me. She must have been a good teacher. She was. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. After dinner, Ava immediately started clearing plates. When Maylene tried to help, Ava physically moved between her and the sink. I've got it. I can help. I said I've got it. Caleb, standing in the doorway, rubbed his face. Ava, you're being rude. I'm being efficient. There's a difference. Ava, I have homework. I'll do the dishes after. She walked past them, her shoulder deliberately bumping Maylene's, and disappeared upstairs. Noah, who'd been watching all of this silently, tugged on Caleb's sleeve. What, buddy? Noah pointed upstairs, then at Caleb, then made a gesture that looked like an explosion. Yeah, your sister's pretty mad, Caleb agreed. She'll get over it. But he didn't sound convinced. That night, lying in bed in her new room, Maylene stared at the ceiling and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. She could hear Ava moving around in the next room, angry footsteps, a drawer slamming, music turned up just slightly too loud. A 14-year-old girl's way of saying, I'm still in control here. Across the hall, all was silent. Noah's room was dark, but Maylene could picture him in there. This quiet little boy who'd lost his mother and his voice in the same accident. And downstairs, she could hear Caleb still moving around. She checked her phone. It was past midnight. The man apparently didn't sleep. This family was broken in ways she didn't fully understand yet. And Ava was right. She'd probably fail at this. The other 3 had. But maybe, Maylene thought as she finally drifted off, maybe she was just stubborn enough to stay. The next morning, Maylene woke at 5:30 to the sound of boots on the stairs. She threw on jeans and a sweater and went downstairs to find Caleb in the kitchen, making coffee. You're up early, he said. So are you. A ranch doesn't run itself. I've got to check the herd, fix a fence that went down yesterday, and about 15 other things before noon. He poured coffee into a travel mug that had definitely seen better days. There's coffee if you want it. Ava gets up around 6 for school. Noah sleeps till 7, usually. What do you want me to do today? Caleb looked around the kitchen, which was still clean from yesterday's effort. Whatever you think needs doing. I trust your judgment. He left before she could respond. Maylene spent the next hour making a mental inventory of the house. The kitchen was clean now, but the living room was still chaotic. The laundry situation was desperate. The bathrooms needed attention. and everywhere she looked, there were signs of a household that had been running on autopilot for too long. At 6:15, she heard movement upstairs. Ava, right on schedule. Maylene had made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, bacon. Nothing fancy, but hot and ready. Ava came downstairs in her school clothes, her hair already pulled back, her backpack over one shoulder. She stopped when she saw the table set for breakfast. I don't eat breakfast. Everyone should eat breakfast. I don't have time. It's 6:15. The bus doesn't come until 7:30. You have time. Ava's jaw set in that stubborn line. I'm not hungry. You didn't eat dinner last night either. So? So you're a teenage girl who needs fuel. Sit down and eat something. You're not my mother. The words hung in the air between them, sharp as broken glass. Maylene kept her voice level. I know I'm not. I'm not trying to be. But I made breakfast and you need to eat, so sit down and have some food. And if I don't, then you don't. But the food's here if you want it. Ava stared at her for a long moment. Then, with exaggerated slowness, she sat down and took exactly one piece of toast. She ate it dry, without butter or jam, maintaining eye contact with Maylene the entire time. It was the most aggressive display of toast eating Maylene had ever witnessed. There, Ava said when she'd finished. Happy? Thrilled. Ava grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. Ava? The girl stopped but didn't turn around. Your lunch, you forgot it. Maylene held up a brown paper bag. I don't need to. I made it already. Might as well take it. Ava turned around slowly, suspicion written all over her face. She took the bag like it might be a bomb, opened it, and looked inside. A sandwich, an apple, some carrots, a cookie. My mom used to pack cookies, Ava said quietly. Then her face hardened again. But these aren't as good as hers. She left before Maylene could respond. At 7, Noah appeared at the top of the stairs. He was wearing mismatched pajamas, one with dinosaurs, one with trucks, and his hair was sticking up at odd angles. He stood there, looking uncertain, until Maylene smiled at him. Good morning, Noah. Are you hungry? He nodded. Come on down. I made breakfast. He descended the stairs carefully, one at a time, holding the railing. When he reached the bottom, he walked to the table and climbed into a chair. Maylene served him eggs and toast, cut into small pieces. She'd remembered that he was methodical about his food and figured smaller pieces might work better. Noah ate slowly, carefully. When he was done, he slid off his chair, brought his plate to the sink, and pointed at it. Thank you, Noah. That's very helpful. He smiled that small smile and wandered into the living room where he started organizing toys that were scattered across the floor. Maylene was washing dishes when Caleb came back in, dusty and tired despite it being only 8 in the morning. How'd it go with Ava? She ate one piece of dry toast and told me my cookies aren't as good as her mother's. Sounds about right. He grabbed another cup of coffee. She say anything else? Not really, but she took the lunch I made. That's something. Catherine used to pack her lunch every day. Ava stopped bringing lunch to school after she died. Just went without. The school called me about it, worried she wasn't eating. I tried making lunches, but she wouldn't take them, said she didn't need anyone taking care of her. She's protecting herself. From what? From getting attached to someone who might leave, like her mother did. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. That's depressingly insightful. I've had some experience with people leaving. He didn't ask her to elaborate, and she was grateful for that. The days started to form a pattern. Caleb up before dawn, working until dark. Ava hostile, but gradually, incrementally less so. She started eating 2 pieces of toast, then added eggs, then actually accepted a full breakfast without comment. Noah quiet but present, building elaborate structures with blocks, or organizing toys, or just sitting near Maylene while she worked. By the end of the first week, Maylene had cleaned the entire house, organized the chaos, established a laundry system that actually worked. She'd figured out what everyone liked to eat and started cooking meals that people actually wanted. The house started to feel less like a disaster zone and more like a home. But Ava still watched her like a hawk, waiting for her to fail or leave or prove that she was just like all the others. On Friday evening, Maylene was making dinner when she heard Ava come home. The girl walked into the kitchen, dropped her backpack, and stood there. "Can I ask you something?" Ava said. "Of course." "Why are you here? Like, really here? Sarah said you came from Boston. Why would anyone leave Boston for this?" Maylene set down her knife. This felt important. "Because my marriage ended and I needed a fresh start. Somewhere far away from everything I knew." "So you're running away?" "Yes." The honesty seemed to surprise Ava. "From what?" "From a life that wasn't working. From people who made me feel worthless. From a version of myself I didn't like very much." "Did he hit you? Your husband?" "No, he just didn't see me. I was invisible in my own life." Ava was quiet for a moment. "My mom wasn't invisible. Everyone saw her. Everyone loved her. She was everything." "I bet she was. You can't replace her." "I'm not trying to." "Then what are you trying to do?" Maylene thought about it. "I'm trying to be useful, to have a purpose, to matter to someone, even if it's just by making sure they have clean laundry and hot meals." "That's kind of sad." "Maybe, but it's honest." Ava picked at the strap of her backpack. "The cookies you made, they're not as good as Mom's, but they're not bad." It was the closest thing to a compliment Maylene had received, and she'd take it. "Thank you, Ava." "Whatever, I have homework." But before she left, she turned back. "Also, I'm failing chemistry. I have a test next week and I don't understand any of it. Can you help?" "I can try. I was pretty good at chemistry in school." "Fine, after dinner." They spent 2 hours that night bent over Ava's chemistry textbook. Maylene had forgotten how much she'd actually enjoyed science, back before her life had become about doctor's appointments and fertility charts and failed attempts at pregnancy. Ava was smart, really smart, but she'd clearly been struggling in silence, too proud or too busy to ask for help. "Why didn't you tell your dad you were failing?" Maylene asked. "He has enough to worry about." "Ava, you're his daughter. He wants to know if you're struggling. He can't fix it, so what's the point? The point is that you don't have to carry everything alone." Ava looked at her, and for the first time Maylene saw past the armor to the scared 14-year-old underneath. "Everyone leaves eventually. My mom left, the housekeepers left, even my best friend moved away last year. If I don't take care of things myself, nothing gets done. I'm not leaving. You say that now, but you will. They all do." Maylene wanted to promise she'd stay forever, but she'd learned not to make promises she might not be able to keep. "I'm here now. That's all I can tell you, but right now I'm here, and I'm not planning on going anywhere, so let's focus on getting you through this chemistry test. Deal?" Ava studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Deal." By the end of the second week, Noah had started sitting with Maylene while she cooked. He didn't talk, but he'd hand her utensils when she needed them, or point to ingredients. She started letting him help with simple tasks, stirring batter, arranging vegetables, setting the table. One evening, while they were making cookies together, Noah tugged on her sleeve. When she looked down, he pointed to the mixing bowl, then to himself, then made a stirring motion. "You want to stir?" He nodded. She handed him the wooden spoon. He stirred with intense concentration, his tongue poking out slightly. Caleb walked in and froze, watching his son actually engaging with something other than blocks or silent organization. When the cookies were done and Noah had gone to wash his hands, Caleb approached Maylene. "How did you do that?" "Do what?" "Get him to participate, to want to help." "I didn't do anything special. I just let him be part of something without forcing him to talk about it. He hasn't wanted to be part of anything since Catherine died. Maybe he just needed someone to invite him without expectations." Caleb looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're good at this." At what?" "At seeing what people need." "I'm good at seeing what I would have needed. There's a difference." That night, after everyone was in bed, Maylene was reading in her room when she heard a soft knock on her door. "Come in." Noah pushed the door open. He was in his pajamas, holding a stuffed bear that looked well-loved. "Noah? What's wrong? Can't sleep?" He shook his head, then walked over to her bed and held out the bear. "Is this for me?" He shook his head again, then pointed to himself, then to her, then made a gesture she'd learned meant stay. You want to stay here? He nodded. Did you have a bad dream? Another nod. Maylene pulled back her covers. Okay, come on. Noah climbed into bed next to her, clutching his bear. Within minutes, he was asleep. Maylene looked down at this small, silent boy who trusted her enough to come to her when he was scared. She felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been locked tight since the doctors had told her she'd never be a mother. She wasn't his mother. She never would be. But maybe, just maybe, she could be someone who mattered to him anyway. In the morning, she woke to find Noah gone, the covers neatly pulled back. On her nightstand, he'd left a drawing, crayon on paper. It showed a house with 4 stick figures, a tall one labeled Dad, a medium one labeled AVA, a small one labeled Me, and another medium one labeled Maylin. He'd spelled her name wrong, but he'd included her in his family picture. Maylene put the drawing in her desk drawer where she could look at it whenever she doubted whether she belonged here. By the end of the 3rd week, something had shifted. Ava still had her moments of hostility, but they were fewer and farther between. She'd started actually talking to Maylene about school, about the ranch, about the small frustrations of her daily life. Noah sought Maylene out when he needed comfort or companionship, and Caleb had stopped looking surprised to find her still there every morning. The house felt different, lived in, less like a museum of grief and more like a place where actual humans resided. But Maylene knew better than to get comfortable. She'd learned that lesson the hard way in Boston. Just when you think you've found your place, the ground shifts beneath you. She just didn't expect it to shift quite so soon. It was a Saturday morning, almost a month after she'd arrived. Caleb had gone into town for supplies. Ava was at a friend's house, the first time she'd socialized outside of school since Maylene had arrived. Noah was playing in the living room. Maylene was in the kitchen making bread from scratch when she felt it. A wave of nausea, sudden and overwhelming. She barely made it to the bathroom before she was sick. When it passed, she sat on the bathroom floor, her hand pressed to her stomach, her mind racing. It couldn't be. She counted back. 6 weeks since she'd left Boston. 7 weeks since she'd last been with Daniel. A perfunctory encounter that neither of them had particularly enjoyed, going through the motions of a marriage that had already died. 7 weeks. No, it wasn't possible. The doctors had been clear. Multiple specialists, multiple tests, all saying the same thing. Her chances of natural conception were less than 5%, effectively 0. It had to be stress, or bad food, or anything other than what her body was trying to tell her. But even as she thought it, she knew. Maylene sat on that bathroom floor for a long time, her mind a white noise of panic and disbelief and something that might have been joy if it wasn't so terrifying. If she was pregnant, and that was a massive if, what did that mean? She was legally still married to Daniel. The divorce papers were in process, but not finalized. If she was carrying his child, the thought made her stomach turn again, and this time it had nothing to do with morning sickness. She couldn't go back. She wouldn't. That life was over. But if there was a child, Daniel's child, he would have rights. Patricia would have rights. They would come for her. They would try to take... Maylene forced herself to breathe. She was getting ahead of herself. First, she needed to know for sure. And she needed to figure out what the hell she was going to do if her impossible second chance was actually real. The nearest pharmacy was in town, a 40-minute drive that Maylene couldn't make without explaining where she was going. She spent the rest of Saturday in a fog of anxiety, going through the motions of cooking and cleaning while her mind spun in circles. By Sunday, her day off, she'd made a plan. She'd borrow Caleb's truck, drive to town, buy a test at the pharmacy, and deal with whatever answer it gave her. The problem was asking for the truck. She found Caleb in the barn Sunday morning, fixing a broken stall door. He looked up when she approached, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "Everything okay?" "Fine. I need to go into town. Would it be all right if I borrowed the truck?" He straightened up, studying her. "You feeling all right? You've been pale the last couple days." "I'm fine. Just need to pick up a few things." "I can drive you. I need to stop by the feed store anyway." "No." The word came out too sharp. Maylene softened her tone. "I mean, thank you, but I'd rather go alone. I just need some personal items." Mamandiskiti isama. Understanding flickered across Caleb's face, and he had the decency to look embarrassed. Right. Of course. Keys are on the hook by the door. Just be careful on the main road. There's a curve about 10 miles out that's sharper than it looks. Maylene took the truck and drove too fast, her hands tight on the wheel. The landscape blurred past, fields and fences, and the occasional house set back from the road. She tried not to think about Catherine, about a curve that was sharper than it looked, about how quickly everything could change. The town was quiet on Sunday morning. Maylene parked on Main Street and walked to Miller's Pharmacy, a small storefront squeezed between the hardware store and a place that sold both coffee and fishing tackle. A bell chimed when she pushed open the door. The pharmacist, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses, looked up from behind the counter. Help you find something? Just browsing, thank you. She found the pregnancy tests in aisle 3, tucked between the cold medicine and the vitamin supplements. There were 4 different brands. She grabbed the most expensive one, reasoning that if she was going to have her world turned upside down, she might as well get accurate results. At the register, the pharmacist rang it up without comment, but his eyes were kind. Good luck, he said quietly as he handed her the bag. Maylene drove back to the ranch in silence, the small bag on the passenger seat feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She parked the truck and sat there for a long moment, staring at the house. Through the kitchen window, she could see Ava helping Noah with something at the table. Caleb was probably out working. This life she'd built, fragile and new as it was, felt suddenly precarious. Everything could change in the next 10 minutes. Maylene grabbed the bag and headed inside, going straight to her bathroom. She locked the door, pulled out the test, and read the instructions 3 times, even though they were simple enough. 3 minutes. That's all it would take to know. She took the test and set it on the counter, then sat on the edge of the bathtub and watched the clock on her phone. 1 minute. She'd never wanted children with Daniel, not really. She'd wanted to want them because that's what was expected, what would make Patricia approve, what would secure her place in the family. But the actual desire for a child, that had never been about love or longing. It had been about obligation. 2 minutes. But this, if this was real, this would be different. This would be a child she'd have to choose, a child she'd have to figure out how to protect from a man who'd never wanted her in the first place. Only the family lineage she was supposed to provide. 3 minutes. Maylene stood up, her legs unsteady, and looked at the test. 2 pink lines. She stared at it, waiting for the lines to disappear, to reveal themselves as a trick of the light, or a faulty test, or her desperate imagination. They didn't disappear. She was pregnant. After 3 years of trying, 3 years of doctors and tests and failures and being told it would never happen, she was pregnant, and she had no idea what to do. Maylene sat on the bathroom floor for the second time in 2 days, her back against the tub, the positive test in her hand. She should feel something, joy, terror, anything. Instead, she just felt numb. A knock on the door made her jump. Maylene, you okay in there? Ava's voice. Maylene shoved the test into her pocket and stood up. Fine, just a minute. She splashed cold water on her face, practiced a smile in the mirror that looked more like a grimace, and opened the door. Ava stood there, her arms crossed. You've been acting weird all weekend. Are you sick? No, just tired. You're lying. Ava, I'm not stupid. You drove into town on your day off, you've barely eaten, and you look like you're about to throw up every 5 minutes. If you're sick, just say so. Dad can call Sarah, find someone else. I'm not leaving. The words came out fierce, almost angry. I'm not sick and I'm not leaving, okay? Ava blinked, surprised by the vehemence. Okay, geez, I was just asking. She walked away, leaving Maylene standing in the hallway, her heart racing. She wasn't leaving. She'd meant it. Whatever happened with this pregnancy, whatever Daniel tried to do, she wasn't going back to Boston. She'd find a way to make this work. She had to. The next week passed in a blur of denial and secret panic. Maylene threw herself into work, keeping busy enough that she didn't have time to think. She deep-cleaned closets that didn't need cleaning. She reorganized cabinets that were already organized. She cooked elaborate meals that no one had asked for. Ava noticed. Are you trying to prove something? What do you mean? You're acting like those people on cooking shows who go crazy trying to impress the judges. We don't need gourmet pot roast. We're fine with regular pot roast. I just want things to be nice. Why? We're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. Ava paused. Are you? No, I told you. I'm not leaving. Then stop acting like you're about to disappear. But that was exactly how Maylene felt, like she was standing on the edge of something, waiting to fall. It was Wednesday evening when everything started to unravel. Maylene was setting the table for dinner when she heard a vehicle coming up the drive. Not Caleb's truck. He was already home. Something else. Something that sounded expensive. She went to the window and felt her stomach drop. A black Mercedes SUV, pristine and completely out of place on this dusty ranch road. The driver's door opened and Daniel stepped out. For a moment, Maylene couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She just stood there, watching her past climb out of an expensive car and stride toward her present like he owned it. The passenger door opened. Patricia emerged, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than Maylene had made in a month at the ranch. No, Maylene whispered. No, no, no. Ava appeared beside her. Who's that? My husband. Ex-husband. Almost ex-husband. The words tumbled out. He can't be here. Why is he here? Maybe you should ask him. Ava's voice was hard. Want me to get my dad? Yes, please. Ava disappeared. Maylene watched Daniel and Patricia approach the porch. They looked so out of place here. Too polished, too pressed, too city. Daniel had probably never stepped in mud in his life. The knock on the door was sharp, imperious. Maylene didn't move. Another knock, harder this time. Maylene. Daniel's voice through the door. I know you're in there. Open up. Caleb appeared from the kitchen, Ava behind him. He took in Maylene's pale face, then looked at the door. That him? She nodded. You want me to send them away? Everything in Maylene wanted to say yes. Yes, send them away, make them disappear, pretend they'd never found her. But that wouldn't work. They were here. She'd have to deal with them eventually. No, I'll talk to them. She opened the door. Daniel looked exactly the same, perfectly styled dark hair, expensive suit, even though it was a Wednesday evening, that expression of mild annoyance he wore whenever things didn't go exactly as planned. Patricia stood beside him like a sentinel, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Maylene. Daniel said her name like a reprimand. We need to talk. How did you find me? Does it matter? You left without a word, without finishing the divorce proceedings, without... You threw me out. You don't get to act wounded. Patricia stepped forward. May we come inside, or are you going to conduct this discussion on the porch like common people? Maylene felt Caleb move closer behind her, a solid presence. They can come in, he said quietly, but I'm staying. She was grateful for that. They moved to the living room. Daniel and Patricia sat on the couch, like they were visiting a particularly disappointing museum. Caleb stood near the fireplace, his arms crossed. Ava had disappeared upstairs with Noah, but Maylene suspected she was listening from the landing. You look well, Daniel said, which was his way of saying she looked different, harder, maybe, less malleable. What do you want, Daniel? We need to finalize the divorce. You disappeared before signing the final papers. I'll sign them, mail them to me. It's not that simple. He glanced at Patricia, who nodded. We've had some time to think, to reconsider the circumstances of our separation. Maylene's blood went cold. What circumstances? Your inability to conceive was regrettable, but perhaps we were too hasty in ending the marriage. Mother and I have discussed it, and we think, you want me back. The words came out flat, disbelieving. I want to give our marriage another chance. With modern medicine, IVF, surrogacy, there are options we didn't fully explore. Maylene stared at him. You're joking. I'm completely serious. You're still my wife, Maylene. We made vows. You broke those vows the moment you let your mother throw me out. Patricia's voice was ice. We're offering you a second chance. Most women in your position would be grateful. My position? Broke. Alone. Working as a domestic servant in the middle of nowhere. Patricia looked around the living room with barely concealed disdain. Surely this isn't what you want for your life. Caleb spoke for the first time. I think you should leave. Daniel finally seemed to notice him. I'm sorry. Who are you? Caleb Boone, this is my house, and I'm telling you to leave. This is a private matter between a husband and wife. Not anymore, it isn't. The lady asked you to leave, and I'm backing her up. Daniel stood, straightening his suit jacket. Maylene, be reasonable. You can't possibly want to stay here. Look at this place. Look at what you've reduced yourself to. I'm not reduced. I'm finally free. Free? Patricia laughed. A cold sound. You're delusional. You're a housekeeper, Maylene. You clean other people's dirt for minimum wage. I'm helping people who actually need me. That's more than I ever did in your house. Daniel's expression hardened. We're not leaving until you agree to come back to Boston and discuss this properly. Then you're going to be here a long time because I'm not going anywhere. Maylene, get out. Her voice was steady now, certain. Get out of this house and don't come back. You're still legally my wife. Not for long. Send the papers. I'll sign them. But leave. Now. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, then turned to Patricia. Some silent communication passed between them. We're staying at the hotel in town, Patricia said. The Sweetwater Inn, though calling it an inn is generous. We'll give you 24 hours to come to your senses. After that, we'll be forced to take legal action. Legal action for what? For abandonment. For breach of contract. For taking marital assets. Patricia's smile was sharp. Don't think we won't pursue every option available to us. They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and barely contained fury. Maylene watched the Mercedes drive away, her hands shaking. When she turned around, Caleb was still there, his expression concerned. You okay? No. The word came out as barely a whisper. I'm really not okay. What legal action were they talking about? What marital assets? Maylene sank onto the couch. I don't know. I left with one suitcase. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine, but Patricia's vindictive enough to make something up. They can't force you to go back. Can't they? I'm still technically married. The divorce isn't final. And Daniel's family has money, lawyers, connections. She looked at Caleb. I'm so sorry I brought this to your door. You didn't bring anything. They did. He sat down across from her. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is there any reason they'd have legal ground to stand on? Anything you took? Any debt you owe? Maylene thought about the test in her bathroom drawer, about the impossible pregnancy that Daniel didn't know about yet, about the fact that if he found out, everything would change. No, she lied. There's nothing. She hated lying to him, but she wasn't ready to tell anyone about the baby yet, not when she hadn't even processed it herself. Ava came downstairs, Noah trailing behind her. They're gone? For now. Good. They were awful, especially that woman. Is she really your mother-in-law? Unfortunately. Noah came over and leaned against Maylene's knee. She put an arm around him, drawing comfort from his small, solid presence. Are you going to leave? Ava's voice was carefully neutral, but Maylene could hear the fear underneath. No, I told you, I'm not leaving. You said that, but people say a lot of things. My mom said she'd be back in an hour. She wasn't. The room went very quiet. Caleb spoke gently. Ava, that's different. Your mother didn't choose to leave. I know that. I'm just saying people don't always get to keep their promises, even when they want to. She was right, and they all knew it. That night, Maylene couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios in her head. What if Daniel somehow forced her back to Boston? What if Patricia found a legal loophole? What if they discovered she was pregnant? That last thought sent ice through her veins. If Daniel found out about the baby, he'd use it. He wouldn't want the child, not really, but he'd want the control, the leverage, the family legacy his mother was so obsessed with. Maylene got up and went to the window. Outside, the ranch stretched into darkness, punctuated by distant lights from the barn. It was so quiet here, so different from Boston with its constant noise and light and movement. She'd been here almost 2 months, and already this place felt more like home than that brownstone ever had. A soft knock on her door made her turn. "Come in." Ava pushed the door open. She was wearing pajamas with cartoon cats on them, which was so at odds with her usual tough exterior that Maylene almost smiled. "Can't sleep either?" Maylene asked. "I keep thinking about what that woman said, about you being a servant." "I am, technically. It's my job." "But you're not just a servant. You're—" Ava struggled for words. "You're part of things now. You help with my homework. You make Noah smile. You make Dad actually eat breakfast instead of just drinking coffee. You matter." Maylene felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, Ava. That means more than you know." "Are you really not going back?" "I'm really not going back." Ava nodded, then surprised Maylene by crossing the room and hugging her quickly, fiercely. "Good, because I kind of got used to having you around." She left before Maylene could respond, closing the door softly behind her. Maylene sat on her bed, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. She had to tell someone about the pregnancy. She couldn't carry this alone anymore. But who? Caleb barely knew her. Sarah Mitchell might help, but she'd probably insist Maylene see a doctor, which would mean records, which could somehow get back to Daniel. She needed advice. She needed help. She needed someone who understood what it was like to be trapped between an impossible past and an uncertain future. The next morning, Maylene drove back into town. She parked outside Rosie's diner and sat in the truck for a long moment, gathering courage. Then she went inside. Rosie was behind the counter, pouring coffee for the morning crowd. She looked up when Maylene entered, her expression shifting from professional welcome to genuine concern. "Maylene, you look like hell. Sit down. I'll get you some coffee." "Actually, can we talk? Privately?" Rosie studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Martha, take over for a bit." She led Maylene to a small office in the back, barely bigger than a closet. "What's going on?" Maylene hadn't planned what to say, so it all just came tumbling out. The pregnancy. Daniel showing up. The fear that he'd find out and use it against her. The certainty that she couldn't go back, but the terror that she might not have a choice. When she finished, Rosie was quiet for a long moment. "You're pregnant." "Yes." "And your almost ex-husband doesn't know." "No." "But you're sure it's his?" "Yes. There hasn't been anyone else." Rosie poured herself a cup of coffee from a pot in the corner. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, you need to see a doctor, not the one in town. Too small, too much gossip. There's a clinic about an hour away in Riverside. I'll drive you there tomorrow. Tell anyone who asks we're going shopping. Second, you need a lawyer, a good one, someone who can make sure Daniel can't use this baby to control you. I can't afford a lawyer. Sarah Mitchell's nephew is a family law attorney in Denver. He owes me a favor. I'll call him." "Why are you helping me?" Rosie smiled. "Because I've been where you are. Different circumstances, but the same feeling of being trapped by a man who thought he owned you. My first husband, he was a piece of work. Took me 10 years to get free of him, and another 5 to stop being scared he'd find me. So when I see a woman running from something, I help. Simple as that." Maylene felt tears slip down her face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. This is going to get messy before it gets better. But you're tougher than you look, Maylene Carter. I've seen how you handle Ava Boone, and that girl would break lesser people." That afternoon, Daniel showed up at the ranch again. This time, Caleb was in the barn. Maylene answered the door alone. Daniel looked tired, his suit slightly wrinkled. "Can I come in?" "No." "Maylene, please, just 5 minutes. Just you and me, no mother, no audience." Against her better judgment, she stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind her. Daniel leaned against the railing. "This is crazy. You know that, right? Running away to become a housekeeper on a ranch in the middle of nowhere? It's not crazy. It's the sanest thing I've done in years. You're throwing away everything we built together. We didn't build anything, Daniel. Your mother built a perfect little life, and I was just a prop in it. When I stopped being useful, she threw me out. You let her. I was wrong." The admission seemed to cost him something. "I should have fought for you, for us. I see that now." "Do you? Or did your mother decide that having a divorced son looks bad for the family image?" He flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" "I miss you," he said quietly. I know I didn't show it well when we were together, but I do. The house feels empty without you." For just a moment, Maylene saw the man she'd married, the one who'd been charming at that fundraiser, who'd made her laugh, who'd promised her a partnership. But that man had never really existed. He'd been a performance, same as her role as the perfect wife. "I don't miss you," she said. "I don't miss that house, or that life, or any of it. I'm happier here in 2 months than I was in 3 years with you." "You're happy being a servant?" "I'm happy being useful, being seen, being someone who matters to people who actually appreciate me." "You mattered to me." "No, Daniel, I didn't. I was a means to an end, a way to give your mother grandchildren and continue the family line. When I couldn't do that, I became worthless to you. Don't rewrite history now just because you're lonely." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The divorce papers are drawn up. If you want out this badly, fine. Sign them and this is over." "I will. But there's a problem. Mother's lawyers found some irregularities in our financial arrangements." Maylene's stomach dropped. "What irregularities?" "Community property laws are complicated. They're claiming you are entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. The investments, the accounts, I don't want any of it. I never wanted your money." "I know, but Mother does. She wants to make sure you don't take anything, so she's proposing a settlement. You sign a comprehensive release of all marital assets, and in exchange, she won't pursue legal action against you for abandonment or for the emotional distress your leaving caused the family." "Emotional distress? Are you kidding me? I told you she was vindictive." Daniel actually looked apologetic. "Look, just sign the papers, take nothing, owe nothing, and we all move on." "Fine. Bring them tomorrow. I'll sign whatever you want. Just leave me alone after that." "There's one more thing." Daniel hesitated. "Mother wants to make sure there aren't any surprises down the line. She's insisting on a clause that if you're currently pregnant, the child legally belongs to me. Full custody, no exceptions." The world tilted. "What?" "It's just a formality. You can't get pregnant, remember? The doctors were clear, so it shouldn't matter. Just sign the clause and get off my property." Maylene's voice was shaking. "Get off this property right now." "Maylene, she knows. Somehow your mother knows or suspects. That's what this is about. She wants to make sure that if I am pregnant, she can take the baby." "You're paranoid. How would she possibly know?" "I don't know, but I'm not signing anything until I talk to a lawyer. Now leave." Daniel's expression hardened. "You have until Friday. After that, Mother's filing a lawsuit for everything she can think of. And trust me, she can think of a lot." He left. Maylene stood on the porch, her arms wrapped around herself, trying not to shake. When she turned around, Caleb was standing in the doorway. "How much of that did you hear?" she asked. "Enough." He stepped onto the porch. "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. Maylene nodded, unable to speak. "Is it his?" "Yes." "Does he know?" "No, but Patricia suspects. I don't know how, but she suspects." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" "I want to keep this baby. I want to stay here. I want to never see Daniel or his mother again. But I don't know how to make any of that happen." "We'll figure it out." "Why would you help me? This isn't your problem. You're part of this household now. That makes it my problem." He looked at her steadily. "Besides, I've seen how you are with Noah and Ava. You're going to be a good mother, better than what that family would provide." Those words unlocked something in Maylene. She started crying, ugly, gasping sobs that she'd been holding back for weeks. Caleb, looking uncomfortable but determined, put an arm around her shoulders. "It's going to be okay. We'll get you a lawyer, fight this thing properly. Patricia Carter might have money, but she doesn't have jurisdiction out here. This is different territory. She'll find a way. She always does. Maybe, but she hasn't met Sweetwater Valley yet. We protect our own here." Maylene wanted to believe him, but she'd learned the hard way that protection was a fragile thing, easily broken by people with enough money and determination. Still, standing there on that porch with Caleb's steady presence beside her and the ranch stretching out beyond them, she felt something shift. She wasn't alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. That night, after the kids were in bed, Caleb made coffee, and they sat at the kitchen table going through everything Maylene could remember about her marriage, the prenup, the separation. The prenuptial agreement was ironclad, Maylene said, her hands wrapped around the mug for warmth. Patricia's lawyers drew it up. My parents had just died, I was alone, and I signed without really reading it. I trusted Daniel. Big mistake. I know that now. She took a sip of coffee, grimacing at the bitterness. The agreement stated that if the marriage ended without children within 5 years, I got nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, nothing. I walked away with whatever I came in with. Which was? A car that died 2 months before I left. Some furniture and storage. About $3,000 in a savings account that I've been living off of until you started paying me. Caleb was quiet for a moment. What about the baby? Did the prenup address children? It said that any children born during the marriage would remain with the father in the event of divorce, with visitation to be determined by the court. But it was all theoretical. The doctors said I couldn't get pregnant naturally. Obviously, they were wrong. Obviously. Maylene set down her cup. Caleb, if Daniel finds out about this baby before the divorce is final, he'll use the prenup to take full custody. Patricia will make sure of it. She doesn't want the child. She just wants to punish me for leaving. Can she do that? Take custody of an unborn child? I don't know, but she has enough lawyers to try. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made them both look up. Ava appeared in her pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders. Can't sleep? Caleb asked. I heard voices. She looked at Maylene, then at her father. What's going on? And don't say nothing because I know something's wrong. That guy showing up? Maylene looking like she's about to fall apart. You two having secret meetings at midnight? Sit down, Ava, Caleb said. She sat, her arms crossed defensively. Caleb looked at Maylene. Your call. Maylene took a breath. I'm pregnant. My ex-husband doesn't know yet, but his mother suspects. They're trying to force me to sign papers that would give them custody if there is a baby. I'm not signing, which means they're threatening legal action. Ava stared at her. You're pregnant. Yes. With that jerk's baby. Unfortunately, yes. And they want to take it from you. That's the plan. Ava was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, that's messed up. Very much so. Are you going to let them? No, but I don't know how to stop them. We'll figure it out. Ava said it with the certainty of someone who'd been figuring things out on her own for 2 years. We don't let people take what's ours. Right, Dad? Right. Caleb met Maylene's eyes. Family protects family. I'm not family, Maylene said quietly. You live here. You take care of us. You matter to Noah and Ava. That makes you family. He stood up. Tomorrow, we're calling that lawyer Rosie mentioned. We're going to figure out your legal options, and we're going to make sure Patricia Carter learns that out here, money doesn't buy everything. The lawyer's name was Marcus Wheeler, and he drove out to the ranch Thursday morning in a sensible sedan that looked out of place next to all the pickup trucks. He was younger than Maylene expected, maybe 35, with sandy hair and wire-rimmed glasses that made him look like a professor. He sat up at the dining room table with a laptop and a legal pad and got right to business. Tell me everything, he said. So Maylene did. The whole story. From the beginning. The marriage. The infertility. The abandonment. The prenup. The pregnancy. Daniel's visit. When she finished, Marcus was quiet for a long moment, making notes. Okay, he said finally. Here's the situation. The prenup is legal and binding. If you divorced without getting pregnant, you'd walk away with nothing, and that would hold up in any court. But you are pregnant, which changes everything. How? Because you conceived during the marriage, which means the child has rights independent of the prenup. The agreement can't strip an unborn child of their legal claims. Child support, for example, can't be waived by prenuptial agreement. But what about custody? Marcus leaned back in his chair. That's more complicated. The prenup says children would remain with the father, but that's not absolute. Custody is determined by the best interests of the child. not by contract. However, he held up a hand as Maylene started to relax. Given that you left the marital home, that you're currently employed as a housekeeper with minimal income, and that Daniel presumably has more resources and stability, a court might initially favor him. So I'm going to lose. I didn't say that. I said it's complicated. Marcus pulled out a file. Here's what we need to do. First, we establish you as a resident of Wyoming. You've been here almost 3 months. You have employment. You have a residence. That gives us home court advantage. Any custody dispute would be heard here, not in Massachusetts. Can we do that? It's not guaranteed, but it's our best shot. Second, we need to finalize your divorce before the baby is born. Once you're divorced, the prenup becomes moot for custody purposes. You'd be fighting as an unmarried mother, which actually gives you better legal standing. Caleb, who'd been listening from the doorway, spoke up. How long does a divorce take? In Wyoming, with both parties consenting, about 90 days minimum. But if Daniel contests it, drags his feet, files motions, could be 6 months or more. I'll be showing by then, Maylene said. Probably, which is why we need to move fast. Marcus started typing on his laptop. I'm going to draft a response to their settlement offer. We'll reject their custody clause while agreeing to waive all financial claims. That shows good faith. You're not after their money, you just want to protect your child. Daniel said his mother will file a lawsuit if I don't sign by Friday. Letter. She'll be filing in Massachusetts, which gives us grounds to argue improper jurisdiction. Meanwhile, we file here first. Get ahead of them. File for divorce in Wyoming, establish residency, create a paper trail showing you're a stable, employed resident with community ties. I've been here less than 3 months, which is why we need to strengthen your position. Marcus looked at Caleb. Would you be willing to provide a character reference? Testimony about her employment, her care of your children, her integration into the community? Absolutely. Good. We'll need others too. Sarah Mitchell, this Rosie person you mentioned, neighbors, anyone who can speak to your stability and character. Maylene felt overwhelmed. This is a lot. It is. But you've got more going for you than you think. You're employed, you have housing, you have community support. That matters in custody cases. Marcus closed his laptop. One more thing. When's your due date? I'm not sure exactly. Maybe 7 months from now? Late September? Early October? Okay, that gives us time. My advice? Lay low. Don't engage with Daniel or his mother directly. Let me handle all communication. Focus on building your life here, establishing roots. Make Wyoming your home in every way that matters. After Marcus left, Maylene felt exhausted. Caleb made her sit down while he heated up leftover soup. You didn't have to do all that, Yisidaidim, she said. Offer to testify. Get involved in my mess. You're part of this household. That's not a mess, that's family. I'm your housekeeper. You're more than that and you know it. He set the soup in front of her. Eat. You're eating for 2 now. The reminder made her put a hand on her still flat stomach. A baby. She was actually going to have a baby. The thought was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. That afternoon, Sarah Mitchell showed up unannounced. Rosie called me, she said, marching into the kitchen. Told me everything. Why didn't you tell me yourself? I barely processed it myself. Fair enough. Well, you've got my support. I'll testify, write letters, whatever you need. Patricia Carter sounds like a piece of work. That's one way to put it. Sarah sat down at the table. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Are you staying here because you want to, or because you have nowhere else to go? Maylene thought about it. Both, maybe? When I first came here, it was just escape. Anywhere that wasn't Boston. But now, she looked around the kitchen, at the worn counters she'd scrubbed clean, at the window with the view of the mountains, at the children's drawings stuck to the refrigerator with magnets. Now it feels like home, more than that house in Boston ever did. Oh, good. Because if you're going to fight for custody, you need to convince a judge that this is where you belong, not just where you ran to. I know. Do you? Because running and staying are different things. Running is temporary. Staying is a choice you make every day. Sarah's words stuck with Maylene for the rest of the day. Was she running or staying? The answer should have been simple, but it wasn't. She was still thinking about it that evening when Ava came to find her. "Hey, can I talk to you about something?" "Of course." They sat on the porch steps, watching the sun sink toward the mountains. The air was getting cooler, spring was coming, but winter hadn't quite let go yet. "My birthday is in 2 weeks," Ava said. "April 14th. "Okay. I'll be 15. "That's a big one." "I guess." Ava picked at the hem of her jeans. "My mom used to make a big deal about birthdays. Themed parties when I was little, then just family stuff when I got older. But after she died, Dad kind of forgot about them. Last year, he remembered the day of, bought me a card from the gas station. It was fine. I didn't care." The way she said it made clear she had cared, very much. "What would you like this year?" Maylene asked gently. "I don't know. Nothing big. Just something that feels like it matters. Like I matter." Maylene put an arm around her shoulders. "You matter, Ava. So much." "I know. I'm starting to know. It's weird having someone around who actually notices things, like when I'm struggling with homework, or when I'm upset about something. Mom was like that. She just knew. I'm not trying to replace your mother. I know, but I think she'd like you. She'd like that you're here, taking care of Dad and Noah and the house, taking care of me." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "I'll make your birthday special," Maylene said. "I promise." You don't have to. I want to." Ava smiled, small but real. "Okay, thanks." That night, Maylene started planning. She had 2 weeks to make a birthday celebration that would show Ava she mattered, that someone cared enough to pay attention. The next morning, Daniel called. Maylene almost didn't answer, but Marcus had said to document everything. She put the phone on speaker with Caleb in the room as a witness. "Maylene, we need to talk about yesterday." "You can talk to my lawyer, Marcus Wheeler. I'll text you his information." "You got a lawyer?" "Maylene, that's not necessary. We can work this out between us." "No, we can't. Your mother made sure of that when she tried to force me to sign away custody of a baby I'm not even confirmed to be carrying." There was a pause. "So you are pregnant?" Maylene closed her eyes. She'd just confirmed it. "Goodbye, Daniel." "Wait. If you're pregnant, we can work something out. Visitation, shared custody. Through lawyers. That's the only way this happens now. Mother just wants what's best for the family. I'm not part of your family anymore. The baby won't be either. That's not your decision to make alone. Watch me." She hung up before he could respond, her hands shaking. "That went well," Caleb said dryly. "I just confirmed the pregnancy. Marcus is going to kill me." "You didn't confirm anything. Daniel was fishing, and you didn't take the bait." "I basically admitted it." "Basically isn't legally binding." He pulled out his phone. "But we should call Marcus anyway, let him know about the call." Marcus was surprisingly calm when they told him. "It doesn't change anything. They were going to find out eventually. At least now we can stop pretending and focus on the actual fight." "Which is?" "Establishing you as a Wyoming resident with a stable life. How's that birthday party planning going?" Maylene blinked. "How did you know about that?" "Small town. Sarah mentioned it to Rosie. Rosie mentioned it to me. Community involvement is good. Shows you're building a life here, making connections. Keep doing that." After the call, Caleb looked at her. "You're really planning a party for Ava?" "I promised her. Why?" "Because that's exactly the kind of thing Catherine would have done. Making everything special, paying attention to what people needed." He paused. "She'd like you. My wife. She'd like what you're doing here." "I hope so. I know so." Over the next week, Maylene threw herself into party planning while simultaneously trying to establish her Wyoming residency. She got a library card. She opened a bank account at the local credit union. She registered to vote. Every small action creating a paper trail, a proof of belonging. She also started showing, just barely, a slight curve to her stomach that she could still hide under loose shirts. But it was there, undeniable evidence of the life growing inside her. Noah noticed first. He pointed at her stomach one morning, then looked up at her with questioning eyes. "Yes," she said quietly. There's a baby in there. He smiled and put his small hand on her stomach, gentle and wondering. You're going to be a big brother. Well, another big brother. Is that okay? Noah nodded enthusiastically, then ran off to find Ava. When Ava came downstairs, she looked at Maylene's stomach with wide eyes. It's real. I mean, I knew it was real, but seeing it makes it real. Yeah. Are you scared? Terrified. Good, you should be. Babies are a lot of work. I've been helping with Noah since he was born. They cry constantly and smell bad and need everything done for them. Thanks for the pep talk, Ava grinned. But they're also kind of amazing. Noah was pretty cool even when he was tiny. Anyway, you've got us to help. You're not doing this alone. Those words settled something in Maylene. She wasn't alone. She had Caleb, who brought her prenatal vitamins he'd picked up in town without being asked. She had Ava, who started reading parenting books from the library and sharing random facts about infant development. She had Noah, who regularly checked on her stomach like he was monitoring a science experiment. She had a community rallying around her, Sarah and Rosie and even Ellen, who started bringing over maternity clothes her daughter had left behind. But she also had Daniel and Patricia, who'd gone ominously quiet. Marcus said that wasn't a good sign. They're planning something, he warned. Be ready. Maylene tried to be ready, but she wasn't prepared for what happened on the morning of Ava's birthday. She'd spent the week before preparing, ordering a cake from the bakery in the next town over, decorating the dining room with streamers and balloons in Ava's favorite colors, planning a menu of all her favorite foods. Small things, but chosen with care. Ava had claimed she didn't want a big fuss, but Maylene had noticed the way she kept peeking into the dining room to see the decorations, the way she smiled when Maylene asked her what kind of cake she wanted. The morning of April 14th, Maylene got up early to start cooking. She was making pancakes, Ava's favorite breakfast, when someone knocked on the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Caleb was already out with the herd. The kids were still asleep. Maylene opened the door to find a man in a suit holding an envelope. Maylene Carter? Yes? You've been served. He handed her the envelope and walked away before she could respond. With shaking hands, Maylene opened it. It was a summons. Patricia Ashford Carter was suing her for emotional distress, alienation of affection, and breach of contract. She was also filing for emergency custody of any child conceived during the marriage between Maylene and Daniel Carter. The hearing was scheduled for next week. In Boston. Maylene sank onto the porch steps, the papers clutched in her hands. They'd done it. They'd actually done it, and they'd timed it perfectly, serving her on Ava's birthday, giving her barely a week to respond, forcing her to travel to Boston for the hearing. She was still sitting there when Caleb came back for coffee. He took one look at her face and the papers and sat down beside her. Tell me. She handed him the summons. He read through it, his expression darkening with each page. This is garbage. None of this will hold up. It doesn't matter if it holds up. It matters that they're forcing me to fight it, in Boston where they have home court advantage, and if I don't show up, they win by default. Then we go to Boston. You, me, Marcus, we fight this thing. I can't leave. It's Ava's birthday. I promised her, Maylene. Caleb's voice was gentle. Ava will understand. No, she won't. She'll think I'm just like everyone else who's let her down. Her mother who didn't come home, the housekeepers who left, and now me, breaking my promise on the one day that mattered. Then we'll explain, it won't matter. Maylene stood up, crumpling the summons in her fist. Patricia knew exactly what she was doing. She's forcing me to choose between fighting for my baby and being here for Ava. She's making sure I lose either way. She went inside, needing to move, to do something. She went back to making pancakes with mechanical precision, her mind spinning. The pancakes were burning when Ava came downstairs. Something smells weird, she said, then stopped when she saw Maylene's face. What's wrong? Nothing. Happy birthday. You're lying. What happened? Maylene turned off the stove, looking at the ruined pancakes, just like everything else she touched. Ruined. Tell me, Ava insisted. So Maylene did. She explained about the lawsuit, the summons, the hearing in Boston. Ava listened in silence. When Maylene finished, she was quiet for a long moment. When do you have to leave, Wissam? She asked finally. Tomorrow. The hearing is in 5 days and Marcus needs time to prepare. So you'll miss my birthday. I'm so sorry, Ava. I know I promised. It's fine. It's not fine. It is what it is. Ava's voice was flat, emotionless. You have to go. I get it. Ava, I said it's fine. I'm going back to bed. I don't feel like celebrating anyway. She left before Maylene could say anything else. Caleb appeared in the doorway. Give her time. She's just processing. She thinks I'm abandoning her. She thinks the world abandons everyone. It's how she's survived. But she'll come around. Maylene wasn't so sure. She'd seen the look on Ava's face, the walls going back up, the armor clicking into place. She'd finally earned the girl's trust, and now she was losing it. But what choice did she have? If she didn't go to Boston, didn't fight this lawsuit, Patricia would win. She'd lose the baby before it was even born. Maylene spent the rest of the day in a fog, going through the motions. She'd made Ava's favorite dinner anyway, pot roast with roasted vegetables and homemade rolls. She'd set up the decorations, put the cake in the center of the table. When it was time for dinner, Ava came downstairs silently and sat at the table. Noah, sensing the tension, was quieter than usual. Caleb tried to make conversation, but it fell flat. They sang happy birthday. Ava blew out her candles without making a wish. What did you wish for? Noah whispered, the first words he'd spoken all evening. Nothing, Ava said. Wishes don't come true anyway. After dinner, Maylene brought out the present she'd wrapped, a leather journal with Ava's initials embossed on the cover, and a set of expensive gel pens. I noticed you're always writing in that beat-up notebook, Maylene said. I thought you might like something nicer. Ava opened it slowly, running her fingers over the embossed initials. For a moment her face softened. Then she closed it and set it aside. Thanks. That night, Maylene packed for Boston with a heavy heart. She was zipping up her suitcase when someone knocked on her door. Come in. Ava entered, still holding the journal. She sat on the edge of Maylene's bed. I'm being a brat, she said finally. You're being a teenager who's been disappointed too many times. Same thing. Ava traced the embossed initials. This is really nice. Like, really nice. You paid attention to what I needed. Of course I did. My dad wouldn't have noticed I needed a new notebook. Not because he doesn't care, but because he's so busy trying to keep everything together that he misses the small stuff. But you noticed. Ava, I know you have to go to Boston. I know you have to fight for your baby. I'm not actually mad about that. I'm just... She struggled for words. I'm scared that you won't come back, that this will be like my mom. You'll leave for what's supposed to be a short trip, and then you just won't come home. Maylene pulled her into a hug. I'm coming back. I promise you, I'm coming back. You can't promise that. Life doesn't work that way. You're right. I can't promise nothing will happen. But I can promise I'm going to do everything in my power to come back to you and Noah and your dad and this ranch. This is my home now. You're my family, and I fight for my family. Ava was quiet for a moment. Then, okay, go fight, win, come home. I will. And Maylene, happy birthday to me when you get back, like actually happy, with cake and everything. Deal. The next morning, Caleb drove Maylene to the airport in Billings. Marcus was meeting them in Boston. As they drove away from the ranch, Maylene looked back to see Ava and Noah standing on the porch, watching. She'd come here 3 months ago with nothing but a suitcase and a need to escape. Now she was leaving with everything to lose. Boston felt like a different planet. Maylene stepped off the plane into Logan Airport and was immediately overwhelmed by the noise, the crowds, the artificial lighting that made everything look slightly sickly. After 3 months of wide-open spaces and clean air, the city pressed in on her from all sides. Marcus was waiting at baggage claim, looking tired. Good flight? Fine. She grabbed her suitcase off the carousel. Where are we staying? Budget hotel near the courthouse. I know it's not glamorous, but I don't care about glamorous. I just want to get this over with and go home. The words slipped out naturally. Home. Not back to Wyoming, not back to the ranch. Home. Marcus smiled. That's good. Keep that energy for the hearing. They spent the next 3 days preparing. Marcus drilled her on potential questions, walked her through courtroom procedure, explained what Patricia's lawyers would likely try to do. They're going to paint you as unstable, he warned. A woman who abandoned her marriage, ran across the country, took a menial job. They'll argue you're unfit to raise a child. I'm more fit now than I ever was in that house. I know, but we need to prove it. That's why Caleb's character reference is crucial, and Sarah's, and the documentation of your employment, your community involvement, everything. On the 4th day, Caleb arrived. Maylene hadn't expected him to come. He'd said he would testify remotely if needed, but there he was in the hotel lobby looking deeply uncomfortable in dress pants and a button-down shirt. You came, she said. Figured you could use the backup. He shifted his weight. Besides, I've never testified in court before. Seemed like something I should do in person. You didn't have to leave the ranch. The kids are with Ellen. She's thrilled to have them for a few days. Says it makes her feel useful. He looked around the lobby with barely concealed distaste. How do people live like this? All this concrete and noise? You get used to it. I wouldn't want to. That night, unable to sleep, Maylene walked down to the hotel's small business center and checked her email. There was one from Ava, sent earlier that day. Maylene, Dad said you're nervous about tomorrow. Don't be. You're tougher than you think. Also, Noah wants me to tell you the baby probably misses Wyoming already because Boston is too loud. He's weird, but he's probably right. Win this thing and come home. We miss you. Ava Maylene read it 3 times, then screenshot it to show Marcus. Can we use this? Use what? Evidence that I have a support system, that there are kids in Wyoming who need me, who consider me part of their lives. Marcus considered it. Maybe, though they'll argue you're just an employee who's become overly attached, but it shows integration into the community, which helps our residency argument. The morning of the hearing, Maylene dressed carefully in the one professional outfit she owned, a navy dress and blazer she'd worn to interviews back when she thought her life would be about hospitality management. It felt like a costume from someone else's life. The courthouse was exactly as intimidating as she'd feared. All marble and authority, designed to make people feel small. Patricia and Daniel were already there with their legal team, 3 lawyers in expensive suits who looked like they ate cases like this for breakfast. Patricia wore cream-colored Chanel and an expression of absolute certainty that she would win. Daniel looked uncomfortable. He caught Maylene's eye and seemed like he wanted to say something, but Patricia's hand on his arm stopped him. All rise. Judge Margaret Hendricks entered, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. Be seated. We're here for preliminary motions in Carter versus Carter. Ms. Ashford Carter is seeking emergency custody of an unborn child allegedly conceived during the marriage of her son Daniel Carter and the respondent Maylene Carter. Let's start with jurisdiction. Counselor? Patricia's lead lawyer, a man named Bradford Pierce, who had the kind of voice that assumed everyone would listen, stood. Your Honor, the marriage was contracted in Massachusetts, the marital home was in Massachusetts, and the child was conceived in Massachusetts. This court has clear jurisdiction. Marcus stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Carter has been a resident of Wyoming for 3 months. She's employed there, domiciled there, and has established clear residency. Any custody matter should be heard in Wyoming, where the child will be born and raised. 3 months hardly establishes residency, Pierce countered. Mrs. Carter is a transient employee who fled the state to avoid marital obligations. Mrs. Carter left because she was forced out of the marital home by her husband and his mother, Marcus shot back. She's rebuilt her life in Wyoming, where she has employment, housing, and community support. Judge Hendricks held up a hand. I'll hear testimony on the residency question, but first, let's establish the facts. Mrs. Carter, are you pregnant? Maylene stood. Yes, Your Honor. How far along? Approximately 9 weeks. And is Daniel Carter the father? Yes. Mr. Carter, do you wish to establish paternity? Daniel stood, looking miserable. Yes, Your Honor. Then we'll order a paternity test after the birth. In the meantime, let's address the emergency custody request. Ms. Ashford Carter, you're seeking custody of an unborn child. On what grounds? Patricia stood with the kind of grace that came from a lifetime of feeling superior. On the grounds that Mrs. Carter has proven herself unstable, Your Honor. She abandoned her marriage, fled the state, and is currently employed in a position far below her education and capabilities. She's clearly not thinking clearly about what's best for this child. Your Honor, Marcus said, Mrs. Carter left an emotionally abusive situation where she was valued only for her reproductive capacity. When she was unable to conceive, or so everyone believed, she was discarded. Now that she is pregnant, the Carter family suddenly wants her back, but only to control the child. This isn't about the child's welfare. It's about control. Pierce stood again. That's inflammatory and unsubstantiated. The Carter family has significant resources to provide for this child: education, healthcare, opportunities. Mrs. Carter is living on a ranch in rural Wyoming, working as a housekeeper. The disparity is clear. The disparity is between a loving home and a controlling family, Marcus countered. Your Honor, we have character witnesses ready to testify about Mrs. Carter's stability, her integration into her community, and her fitness as a parent. Judge Hendricks leaned back. I'll hear from one witness for each side. Keep it brief. Pierce called Daniel first. Daniel took the stand, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Pierce led him through questions about the marriage, the infertility struggles, Malin's abandonment. Mr. Carter, in your opinion, is your wife fit to raise a child alone? Daniel hesitated. I don't know. You don't know? I mean, Malin was always capable, organized, smart, but she's made some questionable decisions lately. Leaving without talking to me, moving across the country, taking a job that's beneath her. So you have concerns about her judgment? I have concerns about her stability. Marcus stood for cross-examination. Mr. Carter, why did Mrs. Carter leave the marital home? We had some difficulties in the marriage. Specifically, what difficulties? Daniel shifted. We'd been struggling with infertility. It was stressful for both of us. And when the doctors confirmed that natural conception was unlikely, what happened? My mother suggested that perhaps the marriage wasn't working. Your mother suggested ending the marriage because Mrs. Carter couldn't provide an heir. That's not how it was. Isn't it true that your mother called Mrs. Carter a failure, that she told her to leave the house? Pierce objected. Your Honor, hearsay. I'm asking what Mr. Carter witnessed, Marcus said smoothly. Judge Hendricks nodded. Answer the question, Mr. Carter. Daniel looked at his mother, then away. My mother was upset. She said some things she shouldn't have. Such as? She told Malin that she'd failed in her primary obligation, that the marriage was over. And did you defend your wife? The silence was damning. Mr. Carter? I should have. I didn't. I was weak. It was the first honest thing he'd said. Patricia's expression could have cut glass. No further questions, Marcus said. Next, Marcus called Caleb. Caleb walked to the stand like he was walking to a gallows, but once he was sworn in, his voice was steady. Marcus led him through the basics, how Malin came to work at the ranch, what her duties were, how she'd integrated into the household. Mr. Boone, you have 2 children, correct? Yes. Ava, she's 15 now, and Noah, he's 6. How have they responded to Mrs. Carter? Caleb's expression softened. She's been incredible with them. My wife died 2 years ago, and the kids have been struggling. Ava especially. She's been trying to be the woman of the house, taking on responsibilities she's too young for. Malin saw that and started helping without taking over. She's been patient with Ava's anger, gentle with Noah's silence. She pays attention to what they need. Can you give an example? Ava's birthday was last week. Malin spent weeks planning it, making sure every detail was what Ava would want. She notices things, what people like, what they need when they're struggling. That's not something you can fake. In your opinion, is Mrs. Carter fit to be a parent? Absolutely. She's already been parenting my kids for 3 months, and she's been better at it than I have in some ways. She's patient, attentive, and she actually cares. Not because it's her job, but because that's who she is. Pierce stood for cross-examination. Mr. Boone, you employ Mrs. Carter, correct? Yes. So you have a financial interest in keeping her in Wyoming. I have an interest in keeping a good person in my life and my children's lives. That's not financial. That's human. But you pay her salary. If she leaves, you'll need to find a replacement. If she leaves, I'll miss her. My kids will miss her. That's what matters. Isn't it true that you were desperate for help when Mrs. Carter arrived? That you'd been through several housekeepers who all quit? Yes, because the job is hard and my daughter is protective and my son doesn't talk. Maylene stayed because she saw past all that to what we needed, or because she had nowhere else to go. Caleb's jaw tightened. She has somewhere to go now. She has a home with us. That's worth more than whatever you people are offering. Pierce looked at the judge. No further questions. Judge Hendricks called a recess. Maylene, Marcus, and Caleb huddled in a small conference room. How do you think it's going? Maylene asked. Hard to say. Hendricks is tough to read. Marcus checked his notes. But Caleb's testimony was solid. Daniel's admission that he didn't defend you helps our case. What happens now? They'll probably call Patricia. We counter with character witnesses. I've got affidavits from Sarah and Rosie, then Hendricks will make a preliminary ruling on jurisdiction and emergency custody. When they returned, Patricia took the stand. She was polished, prepared, and absolutely certain of her righteousness. Pierce led her through her concerns about Maylene, the abandonment, the impulsive decision to move, the unsuitable employment. In your opinion, Ms. Ashford Carter, what's best for this child? Stability, resources, a proper education, and upbringing. My son can provide all of that. Mrs. Carter is living hand-to-mouth on a ranch, working a job with no future. She's thinking emotionally, not practically. Marcus stood for cross-examination, and his first question cut right to the point. Ms. Ashford Carter, why do you want custody of this child? Patricia blinked. Because it's my grandchild. Is it? You've never met this child. In fact, you spent 3 years telling Mrs. Carter she was worthless specifically because she couldn't produce this grandchild. Now that she's pregnant, suddenly you care. Why? I've always cared about my family. Did you care when you called Mrs. Carter barren? When you told her she'd failed in her primary obligation? When you forced her out of the house? I was trying to help my son move on from a failed marriage. By taking his wife's home and dignity? Marcus pulled out a document. This is the prenuptial agreement you had drawn up. It specifically states that if the marriage ends without children, Mrs. Carter receives nothing. Convenient, isn't it? That's standard practice. And this clause here, the one about custody in the event of divorce, that was your addition, wasn't it? Pierce objected. Relevance o iteko gi dotsimpoate. Your Honor, it goes to motive. Ms. Ashford Carter has been planning to control any potential children since before the marriage even began. Judge Hendricks leaned forward. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Ms. Ashford Carter. Patricia's composure finally cracked. I wanted to protect my family's interests by ensuring that any child born to your son would be under your control, regardless of the mother's fitness or wishes. That's not... Isn't it true that you don't actually care about this child's welfare? You care about control, about the family legacy, about making sure that even if Mrs. Carter manages to have the child you told her she never could, you'll still find a way to take it from her. Objection! Pierce was on his feet. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Wheeler. Marcus looked at Patricia. No further questions. I think we've established motive clearly enough. When Patricia stepped down, she looked genuinely shaken. Daniel wouldn't meet her eyes. Judge Hendricks called both legal teams to the bench. Maylene couldn't hear what was being said, but she could see Marcus arguing forcefully, Pierce responding, the judge asking questions. Finally, Hendricks returned to her seat. I've heard enough for today. Here's my preliminary ruling. First, on jurisdiction, Mrs. Carter has established sufficient residency in Wyoming for custody matters to be heard there. This case is being transferred to Wyoming Family Court. Pierce started to object, but Hendricks cut him off. Second, on emergency custody, I see no grounds for removing an unborn child from its mother. Mrs. Carter has demonstrated employment, housing, and community support. The request for emergency custody is denied. Maylene felt her knees nearly give out. Caleb steadied her with a hand on her arm. However, Hendricks continued, I'm ordering a full custody evaluation after the birth. Both parents will be assessed, and a Wyoming court will make a final determination based on the child's best interests. Mr. Carter, if paternity is established, you'll have the right to petition for custody or visitation at that time. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Maylene stood on the steps and breathed deeply for the first time in days. We won, she said, disbelieving. We won the first round, Marcus corrected. There'll be more to deal with after the baby's born, but yes, for now, we won. You get to go home. Home. There was that word again. Daniel caught up with them on the steps. Patricia was nowhere to be seen, probably off berating her lawyers. Maylene, can we talk? Just for a minute? Caleb looked ready to intervene, but Maylene nodded. It's okay. They walked a short distance away. Daniel looked exhausted, older than he had just days ago. I'm sorry, he said, for all of it, for not standing up to my mother, for the prenup, for how I treated you. You deserved better. Yes, I did. I don't want to fight you for custody. I want you to know that. Mother does, but I don't. Then stop her. I'm trying. I told her after the hearing that I'm done. I'll establish paternity when the baby's born. I'll pay child support, but I'm not fighting you for custody. You'll be a good mother. Better than mother would be as a grandmother. It was the most honest he'd been since their wedding day. Thank you, Maylene said quietly. For what? For finally seeing me. It's 3 months too late, but I'll take it. He smiled sadly. You're different, stronger. Wyoming's been good for you. It has. I found people there who actually value me. I'm glad. He glanced back toward the courthouse. I should go. Mother's going to need damage control. But Maylene, I mean it. I won't fight you, and I'll try to keep Mother from fighting you either, though no promises there. I'll take what I can get. They shook hands, formal, final, and he walked away. Caleb appeared at her elbow. You okay? Yeah, I think I actually am. That night, Maylene, Caleb, and Marcus celebrated with takeout Chinese in the hotel conference room. What happens next? Maylene asked. You go home, live your life, have your baby, Marcus said. If Daniel does try for custody or visitation after the birth, we'll deal with it then, but honestly, I don't think he will. He looked broken in there. His mother will push him. Maybe, but she lost today. Lost big. And people like Patricia Carter don't handle losing well. She might just cut her losses and move on. Or she might come at me even harder. That's always a possibility, but you'll be ready, and you won't be alone. Caleb raised his beer. To not being alone. They clinked bottles and containers, and Maylene felt something settle in her chest. Relief, maybe. Or just the absence of constant fear. They flew back to Wyoming the next morning. When the plane began its descent, Maylene looked out the window and felt genuine joy at the sight of those mountains, those endless fields. She was coming home. Ellen had dropped the kids off at the airport to meet them. Noah saw Maylene first and ran at full speed, crashing into her legs with enough force to nearly knock her over. She knelt down and hugged him tightly. I missed you too, buddy. Ava approached more slowly, trying to maintain her cool teenager demeanor but failing. So, how'd it go? We won. The case is moving to Wyoming, and the emergency custody request was denied. So you're staying? I'm staying. Ava's composure cracked. She hugged Maylene hard enough to hurt. Good. Because Noah's been impossible without you, and Dad can't cook to save his life. Hey, Caleb protested. I made spaghetti. You boiled pasta and dumped jar sauce on it. That's not cooking. They drove home bickering good-naturedly, and Maylene sat in the back with Noah's hand in hers, watching the landscape roll past. When they pulled up to the ranch, she noticed something different, The porch had been cleaned up, the broken equipment removed, the flower beds weeded. "We had some time," Ava said, following her gaze. "Figured we should make the place look nice for when you got back." Maylene's eyes stung with tears. "Thank you." "Yeah, well, it's your home too. Should look like it." That evening, after the kids were in bed, Maylene and Caleb sat on the porch with coffee, watching the sun set behind the mountains. "Thank you," Maylene said, "for coming to Boston, for testifying, for all of it. You don't need to thank me. I do, though. You didn't have to get involved in my mess. It stopped being just your mess when you became part of this family." He was quiet for a moment. "I mean that. You're not just the housekeeper anymore, Maylene. You're part of us." "What does that make me exactly?" "I don't know. We'll figure it out." He looked at her. "But whatever it is, you're here. You're staying. That's what matters." They sat in comfortable silence, and Maylene put a hand on her stomach, feeling the slight swell where her baby was growing. She'd left Boston broken, convinced she was worthless because she couldn't do the one thing she was supposed to. Now she was sitting on a ranch in Wyoming, pregnant with a child she'd thought she could never have, surrounded by people who valued her for who she was, not what she could produce. The irony wasn't lost on her. Over the next few months, Maylene's life settled into a new rhythm. Her pregnancy progressed normally. Morning sickness gave way to energy, then to the third trimester exhaustion. Her stomach grew round and obvious. The baby kicked constantly, especially at night. Noah was fascinated by the pregnancy. He'd put his hand on her stomach and wait patiently for kicks, smiling every time he felt movement. Ava read pregnancy books and shared random facts about fetal development. Caleb made sure she ate properly and rested when she needed to. Marcus called with updates. Daniel had signed an agreement not to pursue custody, though he reserved the right to seek visitation after the baby turned one. Patricia had gone silent. Whether from defeat or strategy, no one knew. Sarah and Rosie organized a baby shower at the diner. Half the town showed up, bringing hand-me-down baby clothes and homemade blankets and unsolicited advice about everything from breastfeeding to sleep schedules. "You're one of us now, Rosie said, pressing a casserole dish into Maylene's hands. "That means we take care of you." Summer turned to fall. The ranch hummed with the rhythm of seasonal work. Maylene helped where she could, though Caleb banned her from anything strenuous. One evening in late September, Maylene was making dinner when she felt the first contraction. She gripped the counter, breathing through it. When it passed, she calmly turned off the stove. "Caleb?" He appeared from the living room. "Yeah?" "I think it's time, Bashikten." His eyes went wide. "Boshni? Time, mal. Time." He sprang into action with impressive efficiency, grabbing the hospital bag they'd packed weeks ago, calling Ellen to come stay with the kids, helping Maylene to the truck. The drive to the hospital took 40 minutes that felt like hours. The contractions were getting closer together, stronger. Maylene focused on breathing, on staying calm. "You're doing great," Caleb said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "I'm terrified." "That's allowed." They made it to the hospital with time to spare. The next 12 hours were a blur of pain and exhaustion, and medical professionals telling her to push, breathe, push again. Caleb stayed the entire time. He held her hand, brought her ice chips, never once looked uncomfortable or squeamish. When she screamed at him that this was all his fault, even though it wasn't, he just said, "I know, I'm sorry," and kept holding her hand. Finally, at 6:47 a.m. on September 28th, Maylene's daughter was born. The baby came out screaming, furious at the world, her tiny fists waving. The nurse placed her on Maylene's chest, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. She was perfect, impossibly small with dark hair and a scrunched-up face, and lungs that clearly worked just fine. "Hi," Maylene whispered. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your mom." The baby stopped crying and opened her eyes, dark blue, like all newborns, but alert, looking right at Maylene like she knew her. "She's beautiful," Caleb said softly from beside the bed. "She is." Maylene couldn't stop staring. This impossible baby, this child she'd been told she'd never have. I'm going to name her Catherine, after your wife, if that's okay. Caleb's eyes went wet. Maylene, you don't have to. I want to. She brought me here in a way. If Catherine hadn't existed, if she hadn't left this hole in your family, I never would have come to Wyoming. I never would have found a home. So yes, I want to name my daughter after her. Catherine Maylene, then, Caleb said. Best of both. They called her Kate from the start. The kids came to visit that afternoon. Noah climbed carefully onto the hospital bed and stared at the baby with wide eyes. When Kate wrapped her tiny hand around his finger, he smiled bigger than Maylene had ever seen. Ava hung back, nervous. Can I hold her? Of course. Maylene showed her how to support the head, how to cradle the baby. Ava held Kate like she was made of glass, tears streaming down her face. She's so small. You were this small once. I don't remember. I don't remember being little, or Mom being here, or anything being easy. Ava looked at Maylene. But I'll remember this. I'll remember being here when Kate was born. I'll remember being part of your family. You are part of my family. You have been since the day I met you. Over the next few days, nurses came and went. Pediatricians examined Kate and declared her healthy. Lactation consultants helped with feeding. The world of new motherhood was overwhelming and exhausting and absolutely terrifying. But Maylene wasn't alone. Caleb brought her decent coffee from the cafeteria. Sarah came with groceries for when they got home. Rosie delivered enough casseroles to feed an army. Ellen brought over a bassinet that her grandkids had outgrown. On the third day, Marcus called. How are you feeling? Exhausted, terrified, completely in love. That sounds about right. Listen, I have news. Daniel's lawyers sent over final divorce papers. He's waiving all custody claims, agreeing to standard child support, and asking only for updates and photos until Kate is old enough for supervised visitation. He's being reasonable. What about Patricia? Radio silence. My guess is she's cut her losses. You're not worth the fight anymore. After 3 years of being worthless because she couldn't have children, Maylene was now worthless because she could. The irony was almost funny. So it's over? She asked. The legal part? Yeah, mostly. You'll need to finalize the divorce, establish child support, but the custody fight is done. You won. After they hung up, Maylene looked down at Kate sleeping in her arms. Such a small person to have caused such a huge battle. You're worth it, she whispered. Every fight, every tear, every moment of fear. You're worth all of it. They went home on the 4th day. The ranch looked the same but felt different, like it had been waiting for them. The kids had made a welcome home banner and hung it over the porch. Inside, fresh flowers were on the table. Someone had stocked the refrigerator. That first night home was chaos. Kate cried every 2 hours. Maylene was sore and exhausted and had no idea what she was doing. At 3 a.m., she sat in the rocking chair in her room, feeding Kate and crying from sheer overwhelm. A soft knock on the door. You okay? Caleb's voice. No, yes, I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. Can I come in? Yeah. He entered wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair sticking up. First night's always the hardest. With Ava, Catherine and I took turns. One of us would sleep while the other handled the baby. You don't have to do this alone. You have to work tomorrow. I've worked on less sleep. Give me the baby. You sleep for a few hours. Caleb, Maylene, let me help. So she did. She handed him Kate and collapsed into bed, asleep before her head hit the pillow. When she woke 5 hours later, sunlight was streaming through the window. She panicked for a moment. The baby. Where was the baby? She found Caleb downstairs in the kitchen, Kate asleep against his shoulder while he made coffee one-handed. How long has she been asleep? Maylene asked. About an hour. She ate at 6, screamed until 7, then finally passed out. I've been too afraid to put her down. Maylene took Kate gently, and the baby didn't even stir. Thank you. You don't have to keep thanking me. Yes, I do. You didn't sign up for any of this. Didn't I? He poured coffee into 2 mugs. I hired you to help with my family. You're helping. Now you have a baby who needs help, so we help back. That's how it works? That's not how it worked in Boston. Well, you're not in Boston anymore. No, she wasn't. She was in Wyoming, in a house that felt like home, with a man who helped her at 3 a.m. and didn't expect anything in return, with kids who fought over who got to hold the baby, with a community that showed up with food and supplies and unsolicited advice. She was exactly where she needed to be. The months that followed were hard in ways Maylene hadn't anticipated. Kate was colicky, screaming for hours with no clear cause. Sleep deprivation made everything harder. Maylene's body ached from the pregnancy and birth. Some days she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. But then Kate would smile, that first real smile at 6 weeks, and it would all feel worth it. Or Noah would bring his stuffed bear to put in the crib because maybe it will help her sleep. Or Ava would take the baby so Maylene could shower. Or Caleb would show up with coffee and breakfast and a quiet, "You're doing great." By the time winter came, they'd found a rhythm. Maylene handled most of the nighttime feedings, but Caleb took the early morning shift so she could sleep. Ava helped with diaper changes and laundry. Noah entertained Kate with silly faces that made her laugh. They weren't a traditional family. They were something stranger, more complicated. A widowed father and his kids, a divorced mother and her baby, all living under one roof and somehow making it work. One evening in December, after the kids were asleep and Kate was down for her longest stretch of the night, Maylene and Caleb sat on the porch despite the cold. "I've been thinking," Caleb said. "Dangerous activity." He smiled. "I've been thinking about us. This arrangement." Maylene's stomach tightened. "If you want me to find my own place, I understand. I can start looking." "That's not what I mean." He turned to face her. "I mean, maybe we should make this official." "Official how?" "Marriage." Maylene stared at him. "What?" "Hear me out. We're already living like a family. You help with my kids, I help with yours. We work well together. We care about each other. And if we're married, it gives you extra legal protection against Daniel and his mother. Makes it harder for them to claim you're unstable. Caleb, you can't propose marriage for legal protection." "Why not? People get married for worse reasons. At least this way we're honest about it." "But what about love? Partnership? All that?" "We have partnership. We're partners in raising these kids, running this house. As for love..." He was quiet for a moment. "I loved Catherine. I'll always love her, but she's gone, and I have to keep living. You make living easier. You make this house feel like a home again. That might not be romantic love, but it's real." Maylene thought about it. In Boston, she'd married for what she thought was love, and it had been a disaster. Daniel had been charming and attentive and completely wrong for her. Caleb wasn't charming. He was blunt and awkward and worked too much. But he was solid, reliable. He showed up when she needed him. He valued her for who she was, not what she could provide. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Yes, let's get married. But on one condition." "What's that?" "We tell the kids the truth. This isn't some fairy tale romance. It's two broken people choosing to build something together. They deserve honesty." "Deal." They told the kids the next morning over breakfast. "So let me get this straight," Ava said, her arms crossed. "You're getting married, but not because you're in love. Because it's practical." "Essentially, yes," Caleb said. "That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard." "Is it?" Maylene asked. "Your dad and I care about each other. We work well together. We're already raising you kids as a team. Marriage just makes it official." "But what about love?" "There are different kinds of love, Ava. Romantic love, sure, but also the love that comes from choosing someone every day, from showing up for them, from building a life together." Ava thought about it. "So you're choosing each other?" "Yes." "And you're choosing us, all of us?" "Yes." Noah, who'd been listening quietly, slid off his chair and hugged both of them. Then, for the first time in 2 years, he spoke. "Family," he said clearly. "We're family." Everyone froze. Caleb's eyes went wet. Ava gasped. "Yeah, buddy," Maylene said, her voice shaking. "We're family." Noah nodded, satisfied, and went back to his breakfast like he hadn't just broken 2 years of silence. They got married at the courthouse in January, with just the kids and Sarah and Rosie as witnesses. Maylene wore a simple blue dress. Caleb wore the same outfit he'd worn to testify in Boston. Kate slept through the ceremony in Ava's arms. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was real. That evening, back at the ranch, they had a celebration dinner. Ellen brought a cake. Sarah gave a toast about new beginnings. The kids played with Kate while the adults talked. Later, after everyone had gone home and the kids were asleep, Maylin stood on the porch looking out at the ranch. The land stretched endlessly in the moonlight, beautiful and harsh and full of possibility. Caleb came out to stand beside her. "Any regrets?" he asked. "Not a single one." "Good, because you're stuck with us now. No returns." "I wouldn't return you anyway. You're all too much trouble." He smiled, and they stood there in comfortable silence. Maylene thought about the woman who'd stepped off a train in Sweetwater Valley 9 months ago, broken, desperate, convinced she'd reached the end of her story. She'd been so wrong. This wasn't the end. It was barely even the beginning. She'd spent 3 years being told she was worthless because her body couldn't do what it was supposed to. She'd internalized that failure, let it define her, believed that her only value was in what she could produce. But here, in this hard place with these complicated people, she'd learned something different. Her worth wasn't in what she could give or make or provide. It was in who she was when she showed up every day. In the patience she gave Ava, the gentle attention she gave Noah, the partnership she built with Caleb. In the way she'd fought for Kate, not because the baby proved she wasn't broken, but because every child deserved to be fought for. She wasn't barren. She'd just been planted in the wrong soil. Here, in this unlikely place, she'd finally taken root. And she was growing. Not perfect, not fixed, not without scars from everything that had come before, but growing anyway. Behind her through the window, she could see Ava doing homework at the kitchen table, Noah playing with blocks in the living room, Kate asleep in her bassinet, Caleb checking on the kids before coming back outside. This chaotic, complicated, imperfect family that she'd somehow become part of. Her family. Maylene had spent so long believing that home was something you were born into or married into, something given to you by circumstances beyond your control. But standing there on that porch, she understood the truth. Home wasn't something you were given. It was something you built. One difficult conversation at a time. One act of showing up. One choice to stay when leaving would be easier. She'd built this home. With these people. In this place. And no one, not Daniel, not Patricia, not anyone, could take that away from her. The baby monitor crackled. Kate was stirring. "I'll get her," Caleb said, but Maylin shook her head. "We'll both go." They walked inside together, to their daughter, their kids, their life, their home. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Maylene felt something she'd thought she'd lost forever. She felt whole.